Spreading fear, her words cut deep. Twisting truth to suit her creed. A Christo-Fascist, the queen of deceit. Her agenda dark, her motives discreet. Manipulating minds with her twisted tale. Candace Owens spreading lies like rain. A tool for fascists driving us insane. Keeps Killer Queen in her wicked game. Her web of lies casting shadows of shame. A mask of fake. Candace Owens spreading lies like rain. A tool for fascists driving us insane. Keeps Killer Queen in her wicked game. Her web of lies casting shadows of shame.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to Gish Gallop Girl. I'm your main researcher here, Thomas Anderson, and with me is
Matthew Anderson.
Very
and
well.
I heard in my head again, please only one lie at a time. I keep forgetting that's not our title anymore.
It's not. It's not. I have gone to a lot of work to make sure that it's not. So, before we start, is there anything you want to talk about, or?
Not really that I can think of.
Okay. I am going to go ahead and let the listeners know that we will not be covering the Trump shooting in this episode. I've been saving that for the next episode because Candace has gone off the fucking rails this past week on her show in regards to the Trump shooting. And what was especially funny to me listening to her show this past week was how far her predictions were on the day of, and then the next day, and so on. And the amount of pure bullshit that she has told has just been epic. When any of y'all started playing this episode, you probably heard a theme song for the show. Just up front, I am using an AI song generator to write a different theme song each week. I'll try to keep it towards the theme of whatever we're talking about, but anyway, the name of the app is Donna. It's very good. I'm not shilling for it necessarily, but I like it, and I'm going to be using it. I just think it's a neat tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just heard the song. I
Yeah.
played it in private, and I'm going to mix it in later. But yeah, at any rate, so by the time you're hearing this, of course, you will have sat through maybe the first 3 minutes of the show, which are the fucking theme song. That's not going to be the theme song every week. I am using the hell out of this program to write a different one for every show. But I will make those songs available on our Patreon to paying members. If you pay $5 or more a month, you can get access to the song. Otherwise, you can go through the rigmarole of, downloading and cutting it out of episodes yourself. But we'd really like to be supported, so please consider it. At any rate, we're going to start this episode off, as we do, with reading from Blackout, the Candace Owens book from 2020. That's going to become really significant next week. But I talked with Matthew about that a little bit today, but he has no idea how far it goes. So, at any rate, Candace starts this chapter with the story of Ruby Bridges, who was a young black girl in New Orleans in 1960. Ruby was 6 years old and was the first black student in her school. A media circus took place, of course, and many white kids were pulled from school in protest, and several teachers resigned. One teacher agreed to actually teach Ruby, a white woman named Barbara Henry. Ruby finished the school year as her sole student, and the commotion eventually died down. All of this is true. Candace then goes on to relate the more modern story of the Black Student Union at Williams College in the year 2018. Black students at the college were interested in the idea of affinity housing, where they would have a housing option just for black students. They said they felt tokenized and alone in the mostly white dorms and wanted their own space. This was something they brought up to be debated. I couldn't locate anything more recent about whether the proposal was approved, but I don't think it was. Candace's version of this is that the students wanted to be segregated without cause, which wasn't the case. Candace goes on to claim that college campuses are just social justice factories, and that black people are looking for causes to fight because they have it too good these days. Which is, of course, bullshit. Racism still exists, and even though fire hoses aren't being turned on black citizens because they decided to use a fucking restroom, they do still deal with bullshit that white people and even Asians would never imagine dealing with. Candace goes on to speak on the topic of over-civilization. She mentions that at the time of the book there were live slave auctions being held in Libya and Malawi. Black albino citizens were routinely killed and cut up by witch doctors for the purpose of casting spells for politicians to win seats. Naturally, I had to look into these claims. Candace's sourcing for the live slave auctions was on point because it was a Time magazine article. The albino story was from The Economist magazine. Once I used the Wayback Machine to read the article, I can agree that it was also horrible. Candace uses these stories as examples of what she calls real racism and struggle that are happening elsewhere in the world, again saying that American black people have nothing to complain about. Candace goes on to claim that Democrats want America to be rid of the borders we have, without providing a source for this claim, because there isn't one. I have never seen a mainline Democrat politician ever say anything close to the argument that the borders should be open. It isn't just a thing that they are into, and border security is often one of the few things that they will quietly vote for in lockstep with the Republicans. She goes on to throw shade on the trans communities for wanting to be treated like people, after acknowledging that gay people can now get married, which reads from her book as, "Civilization was achieved for gay couples in the United States when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of same-sex marriage in 2015. Over-civilization, however, is the LGBTQ community's current quest for transgender rights, or more accurately described, the demand that biological men who self-identify as women be granted legal permission to use ladies' restrooms and dominate women's sports competitions." Yeah.
About that.
Yeah. About that.
Well, okay. When the whole movement first started, there were assholes that did, do shit like that where they couldn't quite scrap it in the men's competition, so they went, "I'm a woman," and went into the women's, but that was at the very start of it when things were real rough, and then those sorts of things got filtered out.
Well,
to my knowledge, anyway.
The thing is, that was the news that you were getting at the time.
Yeah, in Florida.
Yeah, the thing is that a lot of these trans athletes, they weren't necessarily doing poorly in their field. They weren't at the top.
Yeah.
They weren't doing poorly, but when they finally decided to be themselves, whether it was, whatever transition way it was. The thing is, and they talked about this on Tuckered Out several times, but the thing is, when someone goes from, say, male to female, they have that testosterone advantage for a little bit.
Okay.
But as they get more into the estrogen and dealing with that, because it does take a toll,
Yeah.
they're eventually on a level playing field,
Okay.
one way or the other. Like, female to male transitions, the testosterone does boost them quite a bit,
Yeah.
but they're still dealing with all of those changes and shit. Like, any advantage achieved early on is easily wiped out,
Yeah.
because the stack of hormones they have to take working out at their level is massive. It's so much more than like an office worker,
Yeah.
or,
Well, I mean, even one trans friend I have that
Yeah.
still, he's still going through the transitions from
from
just
from
taking
female to male,
just taking the testosterone.
yeah.
He's reached out to me a couple of times to ask questions of like, hey, how do I burn off some of this? Because he started to get hateful out of nowhere, and he's
Yeah.
like, where's this coming from? And he started asking me, and I was like, that's just extra testosterone, man. You got to burn it off. Do some athletic shit or something.
Yeah, you gotta work it out.
But
yeah,
no, it's that sort of thing that, like I had said before, to my knowledge,
Yeah.
it got just filtered out as things went on.
Yeah.
People were barred from going into competitions until they had hit a certain point
Yeah.
on whatever they were doing.
They basically, like trans athletes still deal with a lot of crap,
Yeah.
but they basically have to pass, and that's very hard.
Yeah.
That's very, very hard for them to do. They basically have to pass to be accepted, and even so, like, from the ones I've read about that have gone from like high school sports to college sports, they had to move out of their area. Like, they had to pass so well that people wouldn't suspect them.
Oh.
Like, and they had to make sure that they moved, if they wanted to stay competitive, they had to move to like fucking Minnesota.
Yeah.
To like the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis and St. Paul, where they're pretty chill about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna, like, you don't want to go from like being fucking bashed in North Carolina to like Texas.
Yeah.
Or Oklahoma, where they're already geared up to bash you when you arrive.
Yeah.
So again, we're in an area, a state rather, that is very, very friendly to the trans community, and like it should be. I mean, a trans athlete that's doing well in any field is going to bring in the same kind of money and sponsorships as anybody else at their level.
Yeah.
It's,
if not maybe a little bit more because of the publicity of them.
Yeah.
I didn't say that word right.
Publicity.
Publicity.
Yeah. I mean, if they even want it, like, if they even want that, like, because I mean, generally, like, the ones that I've met that have been truly, like, I was born wrong. Those, that really, really have that going on. They don't really want recognition. They don't want you to see them, like in the case of your friend. I mean, I knew them when they were very female.
Yeah.
And did not want to be seen as a woman.
No.
Wanted that breast surgery as soon as possible to take that aspect away and be on the hormones and wipe that femaleness away so that he wouldn't be seen as that anymore. It's one thing to be seen as a beautiful man. It's something else to be ogled as a woman.
Yeah.
Like, I think maybe he'll know that it's happened when, like, maybe gay men start on him.
Yeah.
I mean, but that all said, it's like they don't really want to be seen as what they were at all. Like, they've and to any of them that have figured it out early on and have waited until they're like 18 to get the proper care started and everything, they've spent years self-hating.
Yeah.
They don't, like, they're not, and of course, I'm using blanket terms here. It's not all of them, but the ones I've been fortunate enough to know over the years, they don't want to be seen as who they were.
No.
That's why it's called a dead name.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you go from Jack to Jill, you don't want to be known as Jack anymore. You never did, likely.
Yeah.
You know, so...
It's also usually why when they change their names, they usually go for something that's like just so far
afield,
way out there that nobody's gonna think, oh, were you Emma in high school? You know?
Yeah.
It's usually something like, my name's Gary now.
Yeah.
You know, it's something completely out there.
You know, because they never wanted to be seen as Emma. They wanted to be Gary forever. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, hey, I understand.
I think it's fun when they get eccentric with names, though, because it's like that's when it starts getting into the territory of like when one of them I've talked to once changed their name to Xerxes. I was like, okay, that's
a swing.
Yeah.
That's a swing. Yeah. I mean, hey, okay.
Yeah.
If you want to be Emperor Xerxes, you do you.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, back into the book here.
Mm-hmm.
Candace goes on to say further that the previous generations prior to the 1980s experienced real conflict, and she calls back to the generations that fought in Vietnam and World War II and completely skips the Korean War. Which brings me back to something I've said about her often, which is that her view of history is largely devoid of a great many facts and events that others just kind of understand. She actually makes the assertion that demanding progress to go further for the black community will only result in regression of the community as a whole. Candace goes on to tell the story of Amari Allen, excuse me, a 12-year-old girl that claimed racist classmates had shorn off her dreadlocks on the playground. Now, the incident was a lie, and the school had been in the news cycle previously for having anti-gay policies and for previously employing Vice President Mike Pence's wife. Candace goes on to share another story of a girl named Tawana Brawley that accused 6 men of raping her, and unfortunately some of the men that came to help her in public defense efforts were Mike Tyson, Don King, and Bill Cosby. Brawley later said that her alleged rape was false and apologized to the named men. This happened in 1987. Candace didn't put a date on it. I had to look it up because she actually said it happened not so long ago. This would have been around the same period that Cosby was drugging women to get laid, Don King was representing Tyson, and Tyson himself was beating and raping women. So, not great dudes at the time. Anyway, Candace tells another story about a false rape allegation at Duke University in 2007. She then quotes a passage from a religious leader of a group called Founders Ministries. It isn't important, and I don't care to rehash what the man said that agrees with Candace's worldview. It's just an op-ed piece from a white dude. Moving on, Candace goes on to accuse the media of widening the racial divide in America, which she of course said was immaterial at the top of the book and in her congressional statements. She uses this all to lead into an attack on the city governments of Baltimore, Flint, and Newark, claiming that the governments there have not improved the lives of black citizens and have given them shit to live in, again, without calling out or linking to possible reasons why. Again, this is her book. She could have done the work, but it is my contention that she didn't bother, because the actual reasons would probably prove that, like most problems, the answers and fixes are complex and take more work than just pointing a finger at someone. Like in the case of Flint, Michigan. Going off script here. In the case of Flint, Michigan, that's an egregious example of the city having lead pipes all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And not repairing them.
I'm going to be honest, when you said Flint, Michigan, I've heard so many, again, given the area we're in, being very accepting, I've heard so many just wild out there names that are even like old ass names. And when you were saying Flint, Michigan, I was like, okay, who's this douchebag?
Right.
Oh, you're talking about Flint, Michigan. Okay, yeah, no.
Yeah, that town
I felt
there. Yeah.
real dumb for a second there.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, Flint has a lot of problems still with its water system, even when it got a lot of media coverage. One of the more fucked up things that Elon Musk has done, was he promised to give like $100 million to fix the water system in Flint, and then he started like just moving the goalposts of how much money he would give and what the terms would be, and
but he never.
I don't know if he ever gave anything. I don't think he did.
Okay.
Or it was so low that it didn't matter. Like, it didn't matter against like the larger backdrop of this city needs a lot of fucking infrastructure work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she then goes on to point a finger at white liberals for allegedly having a savior complex. While this may be true to some degree, I know several white liberal people that have volunteered time at various social causes to see how they could help, and came back with stories that the problems were worse than they could have known. Usually, problems are systemic and require actual work to change, and at that point what matters less is skin color and what matters more is money and power. And all too often those with both don't care much about the plight of the lesser people around them. Anyway, Candace goes on to again bring up the proposal a bunch of college students made on one campus as if it were a problem and solution posed everywhere. It wasn't, and it wasn't implemented. I think she has gotten more traction out of that story and the others she has presented than the people did that were involved in the first place. I'm at the point where I kind of wish they had gotten the affinity housing. At least as an experiment, because if that had worked, Candace wouldn't be using it as an attack on the idea that people working their asses off in school have every right to decide, in a school in which they are paying to attend one way or another, how best to spend their time away from class. Candace ends the chapter in an appeal to the ancestors of her black readership. What would your ancestors think to see you now? She attempts to use this as a shame tactic on her readers, telling them that pressing for a utopia is not a worthwhile goal, and that they should be happy that the struggles enjoined by their ancestors should be remembered. And that's about it. I would like at this time to remind everyone that at any opportunity, Candace will decry Black History Month or similar educational initiatives that celebrate the achievements of Black Americans, often before the civil rights struggles really gained steam. These people that achieved greatness and were celebrities that spurred the image of, you can do this and more. Or more modern black achievers that make our lives better every damn day. Candace doesn't use her platform to call attention to them, regardless of their political leanings. She instead chooses to use her platform to speak lies and be a tokenized person towing the line for the people in power, or at the very least the people she would love to see in power. It's disgusting knowing how her career has gone and what led to the creation of this book. The stated goal of this book is to tear black people away from the Democrat Party, but I think a sub-goal is for non-black people to read it and harden their hearts against anything that would help the black communities around them, because they got their dopamine hit of confirmation bias by reading this crap written by a black American woman. I am glad that she didn't get to actually do her speaking tour back in 2020 for this book, because I cannot imagine the harm, direct and indirect, that could have occurred as a result. And that's the end of chapter fucking 4. Yep.
Okay, whenever somebody uses the what would your ancestors think, it's usually... Sorry, just to make sure that actually picked up, because I realized I kind of fell out on the end there. Whenever somebody uses the what
yeah, what would your ancestors think?
Yeah. Whenever somebody tries to do that, and it's usually always a thing of like when people aren't doing something to push towards a utopia sort of ideal.
Yeah.
That is like, what would your ancestors think for their struggle? Not that, which is, what would your ancestors think for you trying to not struggle?
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, hang on. My ancestors struggled to get me to this point, and I'm still struggling, so I'm going to keep going so that way I'm somebody else's ancestor that they can look back upon and go, thank you for struggling. Now I can live a peaceful life.
Yeah.
Like, that's usually the thought process, not the one she's pushing.
Yeah, no.
It's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. You know, it's like, I can't, you know, it's like, come on, man. You know, it's like, I look at people that are, you know, that like my friends' parents growing up a lot. I'm glad mine didn't do this so much, but my friends' parents growing up a lot would be like, they'd have the when I was your age stories, and it'd always be like some bad, horrible, terrible shit. And it's like, yeah, but shit got better. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, when I was your age, I walked to school miles. It's like, yeah, now we have a bus system.
Yeah.
Thank you for paying your taxes. Like, what the fuck? What do you want me to say?
Yeah.
Like, ugh. So, Candace Show, episode 17. Now, this is going back a bit, because last week we had done a couple of episodes that were sandwiched around 17. Mm-hmm. I held on to that for this week for reasons that will become clear. Episode 17 was titled, and I'm quoting, "Literally Hitler, why can't we talk about him?" Yes, that is the title of this episode. And Candace starts it with...
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today we're going to keep the subject matter light. We're going to discuss Adolf Hitler. No, but I'm completely being serious. Literally Hitler is on the agenda because why can't we discuss him ever? We should. Plus, a Newsweek writer apparently has a death wish because he's written a piece entitled, "Taylor Swift is not a good role model. And if you want to die, that's exactly how you do it. The Swifties are going to come for you." Plus, people are apparently upset with Kyle Rittenhouse. Do you guys remember him from the Kenosha, the BLM, the shooting? He got off. It was amazing. Well, people are upset with him because apparently his mother and his sister have no money, and they started a GoFundMe, and the internet is saying that that is not right because how do you not help out your family? Do you guys agree with that philosophy? All that coming up on Candace.
Yeah, so now I don't want to engage with the Taylor Swift bullshit or the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff today. Candace doesn't like Taylor Swift much at all, and I generally couldn't care less.
What'd Swift do?
Oh, just...
But...
Okay. Alright. I'm not going to get too deep into this.
Okay.
But Candace hates anyone that is successful that isn't part of her club.
Okay.
And Taylor Swift is extremely successful. I didn't care for her that much prior to her 1989 album.
Yeah.
That album is straight bangers.
Mm-hmm.
I've liked a lot of her stuff since.
Yeah.
Candace hates anyone that gets limelight, especially a female.
See, what I like about, and I know it just is happenstance, when she started dating the football player.
Yeah.
Two things that I loved about that entire time. One, nobody was talking about the fucking Super Bowl at work. They were too busy making complaints about Taylor Swift. And I got a kick out of that because
Right.
Nobody was like, man, what if this team, what if that team? Bro, this team's going to win this year. No, it was none of that. It was, are they going to actually show the game or are they going to show Taylor Swift for half of it? I loved that.
Yeah.
It ruined everybody's Super Bowl week. And I fucking loved it. And anybody else that works in retail might agree. Or you like the Super Bowl. Good for you. I could give two shits.
Yeah.
Two, the amount of publicity from that relationship just existing, like passively just existing, was probably great for her sales this past year.
I mean, could have been. Honestly, she did her whole expensive ass tour. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I just swallowed water the wrong way. Okay, so she did her whole expensive ass Eras tour, and then the drivers that drove all the fucking trucks. Mm-hmm. I read that the drivers got $100,000 each.
Yeah.
And then she split $55 million among everybody. Like, she cut a bonus check of splitting $55 million among everybody that worked as her crew.
Yeah.
Everybody not Taylor Swift took home an extra chunk of $55 million after being paid well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And during the tour, she supported food banks, homeless shelters, like all this good shit in the city she went to, and told them not to mention it until after she had gone. If they wanted to mention it at all.
See, and
She didn't hold them to it. She didn't be like, yeah, show everyone this giant check I fucking cut for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, she did a lot of good shit that year, and it's really hard to hate somebody like that unless you're Candace fucking Owens.
Yeah. She's not Candace Owens' mind, Taylor Swift. She's a good person at least.
What was surprising to me was when she came out with her, I was not expecting, because I don't keep up with her shit. I'm just like, oh, there's a new album. She came out with her album, The Tortured Poets Department, that she supposedly wrote during the tour.
Yeah.
It's that album, like all of it. I like the whole anthology, but it's the most melodic fuck you.
Yeah.
It's the most melodic 40 songs of fuck you that I've ever heard. It's great. I have no complaints. Especially one song that she's, I think it's Thank You, Amy.
Yeah.
About someone that shit talked her early in her career and how it just drove her forward. I was like, all right, good work. Good for you, T. Good for you. So, yeah, I like Taylor Swift, so don't come at me, Swifties. As for Kyle Rittenhouse, of course, Candace is a fan of his, and she runs as much cover for him as you can well imagine. We're ready for that one, huh?
No, I wasn't expecting you to click back into the script immediately. So when you said, anyways, I like Taylor Swift, so don't come at me, Swifties, after we just had a very positive conversation about Taylor Swift.
So, yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse. I don't want to engage with that right now either. I just wanted to let everyone know what she's about. We're focusing on the outright Christo-Fascism of this episode and all of last week. Seriously, there's a lot of ground to cover, and Candace says a lot of heinous shit. At one point in one of the episodes, I had to scream for 3 minutes and turn off the show for 2 hours and play my Constant Bops playlist on YouTube. We'll get to that. I had to hear it, and so will the rest of you. But moving on with this one, Candace starts with a clip of Tucker.
So you guys already know that I absolutely loved Tucker Carlson Down Under, the way that he was just giving it to the journalists, because all of their questions were so predictable. And when they got on the subject of Russia, 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 because how could they resist themselves, Tucker had the best response. Take a listen.
Putin! Putin! I think you did strategically because you knew it's what we'd ask. Putin! He's so bad! And I also appreciate that...
Did he make you take the COVID shot?
Putin! That is exactly how a lot of us feel when they start hammering this Russia is bad narrative. We're just bored with it. And by the way, it's not just Putin. I am all...
Yeah, so... because she's a Putin defender. And then we get...
So incredibly bored. I am exhausted. I am tired. I need a nap. When people start doing the Nazi and the, of course, literally Hitler comparisons. It's over. It's canceled. Please stop it. It really started drumming up in 2015 when Trump was running. Literally Hitler. Literally MAGA. They're just like Nazis. It's always literally, right? It's never figuratively. They're like, no, literally Donald J. Trump is Hitler. And of course, I've gone through it. Any person really that has a platform has gone through this. But I will never forget this. Now that I'm on the other side of it and so many years have passed, the first time that I ever almost got canceled, it was because I was discussing Adolf Hitler in an academic sense. Actually, the subject wasn't even about Adolf Hitler. It was a question that was being asked of me. You remember this clip notoriously. They were asking about the word nationalism and why people are afraid of embracing the word nationalism. And I said that it was wrongly attributed to Adolf Hitler. And then BuzzFeed took me out of context. They made it seem as though I was saying Hitler was a good guy, which of course I wasn't.
Okay, so we covered a little bit of this way back in episode 1 of this show, but it is one of the more famous Candace clips and was played by California Congressman Ted Lieu on the floor of Congress when Candace Owens was brought in by the GOP to discuss the rise of white nationalism. Candace played her part poorly at that time since she was testifying against literal experts in the field. Anyway, here's the clip that she chose not to play on her own show, and I actually have 2 clips here, saved by a Twitter user from way back in 2019. Okay, back into it here. I had to actually pull it up on Twitter. The user's name is Existential Fish, and I'll be linking to it in the show notes. But here is the first clip.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets, the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism. In thinking about how it could go bad down the line, I don't really have an issue with nationalism. I really don't. I think that it's okay. It's important to retain your country's identity and to make sure that what's happening here, which I think is incredibly worrisome in terms of the decrease in the birth rate that we're seeing in the UK, is what you kind of want to avoid. So I don't have I have no problems with nationalism. It's globalism that I try to avoid. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so that was that one. Now, she followed up a couple days later with this Periscope video. Now, this is about 4 minutes long, so strap in.
Oh, hello. Random Periscope, because I just turned on my phone on my Twitter for the first time today, and I had all of these notifications from journalists quoting, being like, Candace Owens launches a defense for Hitler's form of nationalism. Some of the most crazy, and this is like, it's actually so insane and so ridiculous that it could only come from BuzzFeed, which is obviously scum of the earth publication. But just to clarify this, because I had about 50 emails from journalists reaching out asking for clarity. I was at an event in the UK and a question was asked, not about Hitler, but about the difference between, we're talking about globalism versus nationalism. I think the person asked, how can we as people that, believe in the sovereignty of our nations avoid being called nationalists? And I thought that the person was sort of implying that nationalism is a dirty word, and we see that a lot in America, that nationalism is sort of conflated with, for some reason, Hitler. Like that the only interpretation or the only understanding of the word nationalism that people seem to have in America is they instantly think of Hitler. And I think that that's really, really wrong, and that we have to almost correct the record on that. I don't view nationalism or believing in the sovereignty of your nation first, like Trump employs an America First policy, Bolsonaro employs a Brazil First policy. When the sovereignty of your nation is being threatened by outside forces, it's very important that we sort of stand on our own 2 feet and say that we are going to put our nation first. So I answered the question and said to them just that, which is that people wrongly conflate the word nationalism to mean that Hitler was a National Socialist, but in my interpretation, or from my understanding, I would make the argument that he wasn't a nationalist. He was a homicidal, psychotic maniac who was bent on world domination outside of the confines of Germany, and you wouldn't say that he was a nationalist because he wasn't about putting Germans first. There were German Jews that he was putting into camps and murdering. He was a mass murderer. So that's the argument that I was making on stage, is that this man by no means should be considered a nationalist. Everything that he did was just being a psychopathic murderer hell-bent on world domination. So Trump has no interest in conquering the world. I don't think Bolsonaro has any interest in conquering the world, and these people are employing a type of nationalism that is desperately needed in times like this, when you have people that are trying to globalize our economy, and we're seeing that America has been hurt by it and other nations have been hurt by it, and that was the way that I answered the question. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's BuzzFeed. I shouldn't even be doing this video. It's so stupid. But obviously, leftist journalists who are crazy are like, she's saying that Hitler would have been great if he had just focused on Germany. No, I'm saying Hitler wasn't a nationalist. And if Hitler, the only thing that Hitler wanted to do was stay in his country and say, oh, we're making, Germany great again, and he wasn't a homicidal maniac, that we'd be in an entirely different position today. But he was, and there's no excuse or defense ever for everything that he did. I mean, obviously, we've learned the lesson of what happened in Europe with National Socialism, and it's something that will never come to America, like Trump said. So, thank you. I just wanted to clear that up because BuzzFeed is crazy, leftist journalists are crazy, and they're trying to make it seem like I said something that I would never say, and they're obviously extracting the question that was asked, which had absolutely nothing to do with Hitler. I stand by my statements, and that is that.
All right, you
Yes,
look like
that's
you
it.
have questions.
A few.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Something that I have to do, and I'm sure you have to do it too, but something that I have to do in my own head when she speaks is she says such unfathomable bullshit at like the speed of light that I have to
that's the Gish Gallop, my
like
friend.
I get angry for a moment, and then I go, "What the fuck is she talking about?" And then I have to take a second to slow it down in my head
Yeah.
and go, wait, what did she say? And then I have to slow it down again. That's why I kept going, looking, and then going, okay.
Here's the thing.
God, she said nationalists like so many fucking times.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the thing.
Okay.
Anyone, like, the Republicans really do get off, and they get a lot of traction on saying that, the Nazis were National Socialists because that's literally what the name translates to. National Socialist, Workers' Party or whatever. The deal is, when Hitler achieved power, one of the first things he did was get rid of labor unions.
Yeah.
And started to let corporations run rampant over German politics because they didn't care.
Yeah.
They weren't about socialism so much.
Well, I mean, that's...
That's been proved out over time and again, that fascists don't care about socialism.
No.
They will use whatever means to get power.
Yeah.
Which is Nazi shit.
Yeah.
We can call it Nazi shit because it's a specific kind of shit.
Yeah.
Just like elephant shit is a specific kind of shit,
Yeah.
as opposed to goat shit.
Mm-hmm.
Elephant shit is more of a loose pile, more of a mush,
Yeah.
I believe, is what I've been told. Whereas goat shit, we know from experience, is like little marbles.
Yeah.
Lots of little marbles.
Mm-hmm.
So many. But
You know something's wrong when it all compacts together.
yeah,
Like suet.
Yeah,
But-
like that's now that we've grossed out half the audience.
Yeah.
We raised goats, people. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
And rabbits and so many other animals. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, no, that's the function of the Gish Gallop. That's why sometimes I have to listen to her show at least twice before I start cutting clips.
Yeah. To make sure you heard things.
Oh, and yeah,
correct
there's a
all
lot
that.
of times where like she'll say something and I'll start imagining a better world.
Yeah.
And I realize
Yeah.
I've been gone for 5 minutes and I have to scale her shit back, and I'm never angrier than I am at that moment because I'm like, fuck, I gotta go back to okay, and I'll start hitting reverse and be like, nope, and sometimes that'll take me an extra minute or two out of my life to scale back to her shit, and this is usually like while I'm driving. Fortunately, I have buttons on my steering wheel for that shit, but
Yeah.
it's still like gotta go back. Yeah, it's not great. And there's a lot of stuff that I cut out of this show. But,
Yeah. And then as for the difference between nationalists and globalists,
yeah,
I'm just putting this out there.
Yeah.
If, and I might be wrong because I'm a little rusty on my World War II history, but pre-World War, before things actually kicked off as
yeah.
it be, Hitler got into power, and then his first thing was to deport the Jews, right?
Well, there was deportation. That was something that had happened for a while.
Yeah.
There was deportation. In some cases, and we'll get into this a little bit later, some were actually able to buy their way out
Okay.
of what was coming. But yeah, there was deportation. Before they got into concentration camps, they attempted to deport as many as possible.
And
That's the reason why the killing is referred to as the final solution.
Yeah.
Because other solutions had been literally work them to death,
Yep.
slave them to death, ship them out. Those had all been solutions of a type.
Yeah.
The gas chambers and shit were final solutions, but they ultimately they wound up doing things like the gas chambers because, and if you could say anything about Nazis that's positive, a lot of Nazis were recorded as being suicide deaths.
Yeah.
When they lined people up against the walls and shot them. Mm-hmm. Like, that would affect them to the point that they would go home and shoot themselves after doing it enough times.
Yeah. Well,
So they were losing their own troops to killing, 30, 50 people at a time, or hundreds at a time.
Yeah.
They would lose their own troops, and they're like, well, we can't keep doing this. We have to come up with something else.
Yeah,
And that was when they were doing, the
gas chambers
the gas chambers, the work them to death. And a lot of the people that would go to the gas chambers, they would get off the trains and be assessed at the various, concentration camp facilities. And the ones that were assessed to be like too young to be useful or too crippled to be useful or whatever, sometimes entire families would be sent off to the chambers immediately. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't feed them or anything. They would just be like, go to that building. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's in the Devil's algorithm or the Devil's arithmetic, something like that.
I'm not familiar, but yeah.
But it was a period movie for that. The whole thing of it wasn't Auschwitz specific, but it was one of the concentration camps.
Yeah.
It's a historical movie, real good.
Yeah.
Hate that I can't remember the name of it. I know it was Devil's
Anyway,
something math.
move on.
But with that, also, if they couldn't work them to death first, if they started to come down sick, or they suspected that somebody in there might spread a sickness amongst the rest of the workers, they would haul them off to go deal with them.
That was conditional, though. In a lot of cases, they really didn't care. Mm-hmm. It was down to the German Nazi. Let's call them what they were. There was a difference between Germans and Nazis.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Nazis didn't always care that much.
Mm-hmm. The higher chain of command really didn't care.
No, so yeah, there were. I mean, and the way that those people lived in their bunkers, they didn't really have beds so much. They were just sleeping on the floors and stuff. Disease was really common. Mm-hmm. But since they weren't extracting much value out of the labor of these people that they were barely feeding anyway.
Yeah.
If an entire bunkhouse and if an entire flophouse dies, so what? Those 30 men or women will be replaced the next day.
Yeah.
They had a steady stream of people being expelled from countries just to appease the Nazis.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, yeah, so, as I've said before, Candace's knowledge of Hitler and World War II is worse than most people. But I think it is especially worse than most people in political media. Her understanding of fascism rivals that of what was taught in the cult school I attended through the Abeka book curriculum. While I would love to see a transcript of Candace's high school report cards, I seriously doubt that she has ever had high marks in history or anything approaching critical thinking. Mostly because she has only gotten more into the mainline Christo-Fascism as she has gotten older and more involved in that world. So, moving on.
That's always a hoax when somebody is pretending that someone jumped up and said that, but it didn't matter. People were incensed. They were demanding my cancellation. I had Jewish groups demanding my cancellation and saying, how dare I? And I even got blacklisted temporarily from Fox News until Stuart Varney was the first one who had me on his show, and we talked about the scandal, and he gave me a piece of advice. He said, you should just never talk about Adolf Hitler. And at the time, I was so appreciative. I was like, thank you for allowing me to not have my entire platform canceled. But I reflect on that, and I'm like, what an absolute nonsense that is. And I'm not saying this about Stuart Varney, but just that general idea, and that is an idea that permeates, is that we are not allowed to discuss Adolf Hitler. Why? That is crazy, especially because he is the focus of all of our youth indoctrination, right? We have a visceral response when we hear his name. That's why I did the sound effect, dun dun dun, because they've turned him almost into Lord Voldemort. I don't know if you're a Harry Potter fan. I definitely was and am one. Definitely.
Yeah. So, Candace is, of course, talking out of her ass here. I've never heard anyone not be able to discuss Hitler over my 43 years, especially in media. The History Channel, before it went into alien encrypted craziness, was Hitler heavy throughout much of its early times. It might still be, I really don't know or care. I haven't fucked with it in a long time. But what Candace doesn't want to engage with, and it should be obvious, is that no one wants to engage with anything that could be seen as an uplifting moment in the Third Reich, because it was reprehensible.
Mm-hmm. The only people uplifted during the Third Reich were in the Nazi chain of higher command.
Yeah.
And probably the only ones that are still feeling uplifted from that were whatever ones escaped and somehow managed to keep their same level of whatever they had.
Yeah, the Operation Paperclip and whatever the Soviets called their program.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am glad, however, that a lot of the Nazi brass ceased being uplifted and wound up, dangling for a while by the neck with a certain kind of rope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A very strong anti-Nazi rope, if you will.
Yeah.
Also, the... Fuck. What?
What?
Okay, if she wanted to be a Harry Potter fan about things... Well, no, this was... Fuck, I gotta think about when that movie came out.
Which one?
The Fantastic Beasts. Not the first one, but the second one.
Yeah, what about it?
Well, it's just that the bad guy in that series...
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. Grimwald.
Okay.
Is more of a Hitler type, because he shows up in the middle of a magistrate thing and goes, "Look, Muggles are bad. Let's go genocide them. We're more powerful."
Yeah, here's the thing. Okay. She specifically mentioned the Harry Potter films.
Okay.
I don't think she's going to fuck with Fantastic Beasts. Because she's a J.K. Rowling fan of J.K. Rowling. The TERF bitch, J.K. Rowling. Mm-hmm. You know what TERF is short for?
No.
Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist.
Okay.
J.K. Rowling hates her some trans people.
Yeah.
She do. Which is why I'm so glad that fucking Hogwarts game
has a trans witch in it.
Allows you to be whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's... I haven't played the game, but I've watched, your mom and sister play it, and I always have to laugh at the things that are in there, because it's like, Rowling probably, if she knows anything about this, is probably very angry, but reminds herself that the paycheck is the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Okay, look, the star of the Fantastic Beasts franchise, Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah.
You know what his last most famous role was?
What?
I think he got an Oscar for it. I'm not sure. Don't come at me, film people. But his last notable role before those movies was in the film The Danish Girl.
Okay.
Where he played the historical version of the first male to female transition case. So then he gets the starring role in, basically the Harry Potter prequel series.
Yeah.
I hope she screamed. I hope she screamed bloody fucking murder. Because
I didn't know he'd done that.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was also in the Wachowski brothers. Sorry, look, guys, I got used to calling them the Wachowski brothers over the years. I'm sorry, the Wachowski sisters, or just the Wachowskis.
Yeah.
Again, don't come at me, internet. I love the Matrix series.
He does.
God, including the most recent one. That was so good.
Oh yeah, the most recent one was
fuck,
pretty
that was
good.
Like, I was prepared for it to be good based on reviews, but oh my god, that was a good film.
Honestly, I didn't ever really get really into the Matrix, but Matrix 4 was 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Matrix 4 was pretty damn good.
Yeah. Fuck, I don't remember what it was. Resurrections. That was the subtitle of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the Wachowskis, though, they had previously also directed Eddie Redmayne after they fully transitioned. They had previously directed him in Jupiter Rising.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was the really like angry villain.
Yeah, he was the whiny shithead prince that didn't get anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was just trying to cause it all. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, but yeah, they had made that movie. They also had made V for Vendetta.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons like why they got Hugo Weaving, because he loves working with those people.
Yeah.
Loves them. Yeah, I mean, as far as I understand, the Wachowskis are excellent to work for.
Oh yeah.
Like, I've never read anything crass from anybody about working with them. Like, yeah, they get shit done, and people really do tend to like them. So, but back to the script here. Anything that could be seen as a positive moment in the Third Reich was a copy of another time in history, such as, say, the construction of highways. Roads on the scale of the Autobahn were a new concept when it was built, but I think they were inevitable. Germany just did them in a big bad way. It wasn't groundbreaking, it was based on the concept of Roman roads, and so on. There's no reason to give Hitler or the Reich any kind of positive credit. But people like Candace are pissed that they can't just do that because, in her case, much of the Reich hierarchy were professed Christians. The breakdown, as of a study done in 1939, of Germany was that it was 54% Protestant, 41% Catholic, with atheists making up less than 2% and others making up the other 3%. For the Christo-Fascists, those numbers are everything. But it also doesn't shock me that Candace loves Harry Potter stuff, since her and J.K. Rowling share similar views on the trans community. Anyway.
Was and am one. And this whole concept of a dark lord who should not be named. Adolf Hitler is he who should not be named. And what's really interesting is that when you even discuss, you would assume, since that's the entire focus, the nucleus of our idea of who a bad person is, step aside Satan because we've got Adolf Hitler. When you assume that people, therefore, must know a lot about World War II, you then find out that actually Americans know nothing about World War II. My husband was amazed by this, by the way, obviously, because I'm in this sort of cross-national relationship. My husband was like, why do Americans always use Adolf Hitler as if, he was the number one mass murderer of the 20th century? He wasn't. What is this extreme focus on Nazis and Adolf Hitler as the only comparison we can ever make? And like I said, it's because we have been indoctrinated and we actually know nothing about the person other than the fact that we must fear him. And if you really, really, really want to insult someone, say, you are literally Hitler. Literally.
Yeah, so I should probably explain that she never says it on this episode, but the mainline thought among these dum-dums is that the communist states of various countries were worse than the Nazis on their death tolls. They often provide no context for it or verifiable numbers, but that's the propaganda they follow. Anyway.
And so, yeah, imagine my surprise. I know I've showed you this on the show before, but when I actually then started learning real history and I got out of the bubble of the American education system and I started recognizing these Soviet tactics of introducing really heavy concepts to kids while their brains are developing because you want to traumatize them. And you're traumatizing them because you want them to comply. And what you want them to comply with in this case is Germany, Nazi, Hitler, the greatest evil that's ever happened on Earth, even though factually and statistically it is not. And part of that learning process for me when I started looking into it was coming across a huge fact that we ethnically, the Allies, ethnically cleansed 12 million Germans. Because
Nope, lies. The Allies and certainly the USA did not do that. The highest death toll was in Czechoslovakia at 30,000 Sudetenland Germans, with 3 million expelled from the region. I'll push back on that every time she says it. The death toll and even the expulsion toll across Europe was nowhere near 12 million. Candace goes on to play another clip from the documentary that supposedly served as her red pill moment, The Savage Peace. I won't play it here, but I will tell you that I looked up the men from the clips that she has played so far. Given their history, they're lucky to be alive, as 2 of the 3 were Hitler Youth members. One that she plays the clips of often was Peter Klepsch. who had been anti-fascist during the war and was treated harshly for several days in the post-war period until someone recognized him as an anti-fascist and he was spared a certain death. He is definitely an outlier. And I'll say it again, this happened in another fucking country, and mainstream America was dealing with its own issues post-World War II, as were other countries. And I say it often, but for Candace to keep a focus on just how ethnic Germans were treated, when many of them were Nazi enablers and holdovers, shows more of her cards than she would like. Candace finally gives us a name I can work with here.
People, okay, what is it about Hitler? They were the same. You're probably thinking, but Candace, literally Hitler. He had the camps. That's what made it different. It was the camps. Imagine camps being used to kill people. Oh, you mean the exact same camps that we then transferred the Germans into so that we could, mass kill them? Yeah, I bet you've never heard the name Solomon Morel before, and you should know about him because Solomon Morel is an interesting character. He had some Soviet training, and then one day he just stood up on top of a table and said to these innocent German-speaking civilians, I'm going to torture you because I don't know where my parents are, and they were put into camps. And then he began to torture these individuals who were completely guilty of nothing. They were innocent. Here's another clip from
Solomon Morel was a Holocaust survivor. He was a Jewish man who was a Polish national. After the war, he became a prison guard and later ran the prison he worked in Poland. It is believed that about 1,700 people died as a direct result of his actions. Many of them were tortured or starved. He had a particular and obvious dedication to killing former German soldiers and Nazi supporters. He was going to be tried for war crimes and acts of inhumanity and fled to Israel in the 1990s. Israel refused to extradite him, and he lived there until he died in 2007. So here we have a Jewish man that tortured Nazis and fled to Israel. Double whammy for Candace, and it allows her to point at the Jewish state that she despises. Now, I don't agree with Israel at all, but this kind of thing is like Alien v Predator to me. Candace goes on to quote General Patton talking about how the U.S. should look at fighting the Soviets before he was removed from his command. And then she compares the prison camps of the Nazis in post-World War II to the Japanese internment camps that America did, which no one alive thinks were good. This is all deflection on her part, of course. Then we get
documentary. Take a listen. But then you move on to the experimentation. Yes, of course, that's been embedded into our minds. The Nazis experimented on innocent people. Candace, come on, that's the difference. They experimented on twins. I mean, some of the stories, by the way, sound completely absurd. I mean, like the idea that they just cut a human up and then sewed them back together. Why would you do that? Literally, even if you're the most evil person in the world, that's a tremendous waste of time and supplies. Just slice a person in half and sew them together. That just sounds like bizarre propaganda, but let's just go with it. Let's say that that's actually true, okay? That experimentation is the thing that sets the Nazis apart. Well, why did we bring them all over here thereafter? What was Operation Paperclip? We took all of those top Nazi scientists and we brought them to America. I wonder why we did that. Maybe for a little more experimentation. Have you heard of Dr. Sidney Gottlieb? Have you ever heard of the CIA? If you think experimentation is unique to the Nazis, you need to wake up.
thoughts?
Now, okay.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this isn't in defense of Nazis, because
Right.
I know this would be cut and used for said thing, and probably cut when I have a moment of silence between this statement and my actual statement. For Nazi scientists, there were a lot of mad scientists, as you might say, that would, in fact, cut somebody in half and sew two people together because we don't know what happens.
Yeah.
So, while that is all fucked up, mind, God, it doesn't sound right to say we kept the good ones, but we took the scientists that would be useful to us, the rocket engineers.
Yeah, I mean,
that sort of shit.
There was a certain amount of them that escaped the post-war purge.
Yeah.
And we did bring over a lot of them with questionable morals.
Yeah.
But Behind the Bastards has done a much better job of covering them.
Okay.
So as I move on here, as has been covered on Behind the Bastards, Joseph Mengele, the infamous doctor of Auschwitz, performed numerous well-known experiments on twins and other prisoners for the war effort. Most of it was nonsense, and just an excuse to be an asshole, and for Candace to push it off like this is telling. Also, Gottlieb was not brought over in Operation Paperclip. Many others were, but he was already working in America during the war. He was also an asshole, but he wasn't a German Nazi. Credit where it is due, I say. Yeah.
Sorry, just you know about my the D&D campaign that I run that's pre-World War II.
Yeah.
Well, I just remembered that I have a German that was German-Austrian in that one.
Yeah.
That was on the bad side of World War I.
Yeah.
And one of the party members had questioned him like, "Hey, are you, And he goes, "Look, I might have fought for them, but I was forced to. I'm just an asshole. I'm not a racist."
That's good.
That's what that just reminded me of. He's an asshole, not a Nazi.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all that came to mind.
Yeah, Gottlieb, total asshole, not a Nazi. I mean, he might have shared similar views, who knows?
Yeah.
But just an asshole.
Yeah.
Not a Nazi.
You can be one and not the other.
Well, that's also why she gives him shit, I think, for having existed.
Yeah, because he was just an asshole, not a Nazi.
Yeah. Well, then we get another classic Candace Gish Gallop for the next 2 minutes.
Oh.
So strap in.
Yeah, it's an operation where we just were mass killing civilians, which we do a lot. But of course, if we do it, it's different. It's different because we're not literally Hitler. We drop bombs on entire populations. We firebomb Christians. We drop a nuke on praying Catholics. And if you know about it, you get screamed at by the propagandists in the West. Knowing about it is the crime. The crime is not actually dropping a bomb on praying civilians in Nagasaki. That's not the crime. The crime is not firebombing people through Ash Wednesday in Dresden who were civilians, children. No, that's not the crime. The crime is you knowing. It's me knowing. That's the real problem. And I got to stop knowing these things. I got to stop knowing about Pol Pot. I gotta stop knowing about the Cambodian genocide and knowing that, of course, there were people that did worse things throughout history. Especially as a Christian, I have got to stop talking about Henryk Yagoda. They get real upset when you talk about the Bolsheviks. You want to know why? Because the Bolsheviks were never brought to heel. The Bolsheviks never had to face trials. There were no Nuremberg trials for the Bolsheviks. In fact, many of them came to America, and many of them are in positions of power right now. That's why they get real angry when you start looking into history, when you start recognizing that they are intentionally telling Christians to shut up about the Christians that have been killed all across the world. They get very uncomfortable when you know stuff that they did not put into your book when you were in middle school to traumatize you into compliance of believing that the only bad people ever, there's only two of them, by the way, Putin and Adolf Hitler. So to those people, I'm just going to say, spare me. Because I'm not going to stop talking about real history. I'm going to educate people that follow me about real history because it's the only way that we're going to prevent these psychopaths from doing more psychopathic things in the future. If you're looking for people that behave like literally Hitler, it ain't me, buddy. You got to start examining your own government.
Okay, so from the top, Candace had just come off of made-up or unprovable war crimes that may or may not have been committed by the CIA, and she went into her rant about the Christians killed in military actions. The death toll of Pol Pot was not as high as the Nazi death count. It was estimated to be a maximum of 1.5 million to 2 million people, which is still terrible, but not Holocaust level. Moving on, she made the accusation that the Bolsheviks were never tried, and that's a lie. There were trials known as the Moscow trials, and innocent people were swept up along with Trotsky loyalists and sentenced after admitting to crimes against the people, often under torture. It was a way for Stalin to consolidate power. Further, I probably don't have to say it, but there is no proof that Bolsheviks came to America and assumed positions of power. Periods where they supposedly rooted them out here were known as Red Scares. The most notable being the period where Joseph McCarthy did a purge, particularly of Hollywood post-World War II. This is typical Christo-Fasc bullshit. Candace runs cover for Kyle Rittenhouse for the next 5.5 minutes, and I should note that she interviewed him on her last show. For those unaware, Kyle Rittenhouse is an American man, now, who gained national attention in August 2020 when, at the age of 17, he shot 3 men, killing 2 and injuring 1 during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The protests were in response to the police shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man, which led to widespread civil unrest in the city. Rittenhouse, who lived in Antioch, Illinois, traveled to Kenosha, Wisconsin, claiming he intended to protect businesses from looters and vandals. He was armed with an AR-15 style rifle which had been purchased for him by a friend since he was too young to buy it himself. On the night of August 25, 2020, Rittenhouse was involved in several confrontations. The judge in the case disallowed a lot of evidence that would have probably put Rittenhouse away. And of course, now he is a media icon for the alt-right. I know the distance between him being in Illinois and the unrest in Wisconsin might sound vast, but it is only 14 miles. Or for our non-American listeners, 20 kilometers.
We do have a lot of non-American listeners.
We do.
That reminds me.
It's crazy. Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say, because they simply don't like that the right likes him. And he survived a trial because he should have survived the trial. He was found not guilty because he, in fact, was not guilty of doing anything other than defending himself against deranged pedophiles, because that's who was pursuing him on foot. People who had crimes against children as convictions in their past, not Black Lives Matter supporters. They were just deranged individuals. All right, guys.
Now, I've saved that because it is defamatory, and I wanted it on record that she said that shit. But moving on, Candace goes into her Taylor Swift material, and I'm not going to waste our time on it. But we do have... Well, I did have it. I don't think it made it over. It did not. I'm not going to play it then. I had a tax ad that she ran.
Oh.
Yeah.
As much as I hate her ads, I kind of like listening to her ads.
Let me see. I might have it in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta give her props where it's due. She's good at doing the ad reeling in. It pisses me the fuck off how she does it. You know, like going on a 9/11 tangent to push her meat project.
Yeah.
Sorry. Her meat,
company, whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Good food, real foods or whatever the fuck. Yeah.
No, good ranchers.
Yeah, that was
fuck.
it.
Good ranchers.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah, that was it.
See, it ingrains it in your head. That's how she does it.
Yeah. Candace starts the comments on episode 17 with this gem, which is also a callback to our last episode.
Yesterday I was speaking about how I left the cult of science. Like, I just had to be humble enough to admit that I've been lied to about everything, and I actually have no idea what's going on, and I've realized that we have all been forced into this religion of, like, the experts, and they've turned themselves into gods, and I am just out. I am humble enough to recognize that I don't know anything to be true unless it is in the Bible.
And so then we get this user comment.
This user writes, "This is one of the best episodes so far. Candace, when I think you can't be any better, you just blow my mind even more. I don't know you, but I'm really proud of you. Stay strong and God bless you." Oh, and your transitions to the ads are getting smoother and smoother. Yes, I am getting smoother and smoother at ad transitions. We actually didn't do fun ad transitions today, but don't worry, they will be back. And it's I just feel that God bless me with a platform, and I just want to use it to share truth, and I want to be honest with people, and I think people are responding to it because they are also waking up at the same time as me and realizing that so much of what we learned in school has been an intentional lie, and in many ways we are being enslaved by those lies. We're harming ourselves, we're harming our children. It's all insane.
And that leads into
And speaking of smooth ad transitions, one thing you want to do is make sure things are smooth in the event of an emergency, because there are a lot of emergencies that can happen, which is why I like Ready Pantry. So by now you're probably discerned that I have an apocalyptic mindset. I told you this, me and my husband were always like preparing for like if we just have to live off the land. That's why I learned to grow my own food. And it's also a reason why you should consider having an emergency supply of food and water. We all know we need to have 3 to 6 months of cash on hand, but what about food and water? Nobody thinks of this. I'm worried about you people that live in cities. If you don't, you need to know about Ready Pantry. Ready Pantry offers 25-year shelf-stable food and drinking water that will last for 50 years. These products taste amazing and include meals for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and even come with a dessert. Not to mention the peace of mind you get knowing that you have an emergency supply of food and water ready for whatever comes. Power outages, hurricanes, weather, natural disasters, that's definitely becoming more and more common. What about a grid collapse like in Texas and Ohio? You could also have rolling blackouts like in California. War, supply chain, the list goes on and on and on. There are so many emergencies. Well, guess what? Ready Pantry is an American-based company. All the products are sourced from right here in America. They also use real ingredients packed with sufficient calories and nutrition for everyone in the family. These meals taste great and include meals, as I said, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, even a snack and dessert. So stock your pantry now with buy now, pay later options available at checkout at readypantry.com/Candace. Niccolo, right?
Yeah, I played that to give us a little break from the bleak.
Yeah.
So, yes, Candace is doing the full grift. She has a gold seller sponsor, a meat company sponsor, a money handler sponsor, a tax help sponsor, and a food bucket sponsor. I went to the Ready Pantry site.
Yeah.
It's about the same sales pitch as I expected, having seen the food buckets on offer from other grifters before. I didn't see much difference between what was in a much cheaper bucket from Costco. The company is new in the scene, but I'll keep an eye on them.
What? Why not just like? Okay, so I have friends that are former military. One that's in the military,
Yeah.
and you know, whenever it comes down to MREs, there are some that they're like, man, you hope that you saved a brownie from when you got the one that has a brownie in it. So that way you can go, hey man, I'll give you a brownie, give me yours. Like that's how you that's how you trade MREs in the in the tent. I don't know what it's called, but
whatever,
where everybody eats.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'd rather go to like a military surplus store and get fucking MREs from there.
They're probably cheaper.
Much cheaper. You can get a whole box of them. I know that because my buddy that's former Marine, he couldn't eat actual food for a while there because he just got so used to hammering down MREs that he got home and ate his wife's cooking, which he was looking forward to, and proceeded to puke on the floor.
Oh, jeez.
And he was like, I don't know what happened, but that tasted fucking disgusting. So he had to wean himself off of MREs to eat normal food.
Jeez.
So if you're gonna be getting fucking food for emergency situations, just get some MREs, which have, if you do it right, portioned meals already.
Well, some of the cheapest prices on the food buckets on her sponsor's website were like double the cost of a food bucket from Costco.
Okay, and how much is a food bucket from Costco?
Like $35.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of these were like $70 and above.
Fuck that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's even applying the discount code, because I typed in readypantry.com/Candace, and they applied the discount immediately, so you see it.
Okay.
So even with the discount code applied, it was like double the price of a Costco food bucket, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!"
Well,
now I haven't looked at Costco food buckets in several years, but knowing how prices at Costco don't tend to go up very much, I'm gonna bet they're still about $35 to $40.
Yeah.
I could see them maybe going up to 50 depending on shit, but yeah, they claim that these things will last for 25 years, the same as her sponsors claim, and the same as like Patriot Supply and all these other fucking grifter ass food bucket companies do. What disgusted me was like, I'm looking through a lot of the meals on these things, and a number of them contain mushrooms, and I'm just like, well, I'm out.
Yeah.
like I can't eat mushrooms knowingly without like throwing up. So like I'm out of that.
See, this is how you end up with a Left 4 Dead, I want to say, is the name of the game franchise. This is how you end up with mushroom zombies.
Yeah, right.
I'm just saying,
Well, so, Candace goes on to answer a question from a comment, and it's about 2.5 minutes long.
Oh, God.
Hi, Candace. I'm a 15-year-old from Italy who wants to live in the U.S. in the future. I've realized just recently that I've been propagandized my whole life by my Marxist father and left-wing public school system. Right now, I'm a conservative Christian, Jesus is king, and I'd like to ask you, what research should I do to learn about the actual history like you did, if I don't remember wrong, when you were like 25? Thank you. Amen. P.S. Please like this so she sees this. I saw it and I'm going to answer your question. Honestly, the learning process for me has been very natural. I think you have to start with understanding you were lied to about one thing. Like just one thing that just completely blows your mind. You're like, how could I get this wrong? And I think for me, it was vaccines. Like when I realized that they basically made me pledge myself to a medical system that is obviously making us sick because of a lot of the lies they told us about vaccines. And I was blessed, as crazy as it sounds, by being vaccine injured by the Gardasil vaccine. And that led to me just not trusting authorities. In terms of history, it was kind of the same thing. It would be little tidbits that popped up, like, for example, World War II, something that completely blew my mind, and maybe you guys knew this, but we definitely did not learn this in school, that the Zionists signed an agreement with Hitler, like with the Nazi party, called the Havara Agreement. Learning about that exploded my mind. Like I just thought, why would we not know this? And in that agreement, the German Jews were transferred to Palestine, and it was an agreement where they agreed to sell their stuff, give up their personal effects, and then the money would be transferred via like the Bank of Palestine. And so I would just learn little tidbits here and there, learning about Henrique Goda, learning about the Christian Holocaust, and I would go pursue actual books as opposed to the textbooks. So the textbooks are propaganda. The textbooks are meant to make you see things one way, pursuing actual books. And for me, I started with Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I was very interested in learning about the Bolsheviks and the Soviets because I think they are the most hideous people in the entire world. They brought every ill that we're fighting in society today. I actually think we're fighting communism in America today, and we're fighting socialists in America today because of the fact that we never really defeated the Soviets. Instead, we locked arms with them. I'm answering this question in a lot of different ways, but it was a very natural progression. It wasn't like somebody gave me a set list, but I hope to give people that information slowly, which is why I recommended as a first stop that book, Chaos. That book could make you read 30,000 different books because you're just so shocked at the audacity of evil of our government.
Now, interesting, you said 30,000 different books there.
Oh, God.
When the Allies denazified Germany,
Yeah.
they banned about 30,000 different books.
Oh.
That's a real interesting number
yeah.
for her to just like take off for the top of her head.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Is she really trying the Red Scare run again?
seems like it.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting too is Red Scare was also a character in the Watchmen TV series.
Yeah, I remember
He was
that.
really funny. And
Yeah.
and he was funny until he wasn't.
Yeah.
He definitely went and beat some ass in the Nixon trailer park, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Havara Agreement was real, and it saved about 60,000 Jewish lives. But the fact that Candace says this was her red pill moment, which increasingly seems it will be a list of its own, is telling. I didn't learn about it in school either, but Candace really puts an emphasis on things like this not being taught in school. It clearly didn't matter in the scope of the Holocaust happening anyway as the final solution. Jewish lives were saved for the ones that were wealthy enough to participate. But for this to be a point of contention for her is to be expected given her Christo-Fascism. We covered episode 18 in the last episode. That was the Satanic NASA one, so there's no need to go through it again. Episode 19 was a discussion between Candace and a pro-Israeli comedian, and she chooses her words mostly carefully. I see no reason to go through it, and instead we'll jump into the relevant parts of episode 20, which asks the question in the title, is Diddy a Fed asset?
Well, wait, what? I need that again, but slower, because I think I didn't hear that right at all.
Is Diddy a Fed asset?
Diddy, wait, hang on. Which Diddy?
P. Diddy.
Oh, P. Diddy Diddler. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I heard somebody make that joke once, and that's just,
Well,
because it was,
here's a little bit of context. The answer, of course, is who cares? I don't. I liked a few of his songs back in the late 90s, but aside from a decent performance in Get Him to the Greek, I haven't bothered knowing anything about him
you
since.
can get him to the Greek.
Yeah, he's the one that gives him the Jeffrey.
Oh yeah, and then has to
and
calm
the
him
walls.
down. Yeah.
Petting the walls, that kind of
Okay.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. Most of this episode is celebrity gossip. I am not trying to downplay Diddy beating a woman in 2016.
Oh.
Yeah, but it just isn't relevant to what we're covering today. That said, even though he is past the statute of limitations, I hope he has some consequences from this. It takes Candace over 12 minutes to get through it all, but she blames much of the Diddy drama on the Jewish man that runs Universal Music Group, a record label. It's a ramble, and I didn't want to cover it, but she has gone all in on this, claiming that Diddy hosted sex parties to get evidence on artists to flex on their careers. Anyway, here's a clip I can push back on.
It started coming out right after he said it, and he said all would be exposed. And I should make it clear that in this lawsuit, the reason why Universal Music Group is being sued by Lil Rod is because he alleges that it's them that is sitting at the top of this ring. So essentially, Diddy is working for somebody else, and that person that he named in his lawsuit was Lucien Grange. He heavily implied, and this is again an allegation, that Lucien Grange was having some sort of a homosexual relationship with Diddy. So he is the person that controls Diddy, that Lucien Grange was aware of these parties, that Universal Music Group was aware of these parties. Essentially, that Diddy is the thug and the gangster working on behalf of Lucien Grange. That is the takeaway that you get when you read this lawsuit. So how odd that rather than the media being unbelievably interested, as I was, completely seized by this lawsuit, as I was, rather than them asking questions about Fahim, asking questions about Lucien Grange, who's got a very interesting past, changed his name. I don't tend to trust men that change their last names, least of all 3 times, as his family has done. Rather than any of that, they started attacking me for reading the lawsuit, for putting together the clips. How dare you say that there's some sort of a ring? How dare you say, despite the fact that Diddy still has not been arrested. In fact, the LA County is declining to press charges. Despite having the video evidence of him beating Cassie, they are not pressing any charges. How dare I allege that it's pretty obvious that he's an asset? He's clearly a federal asset. That's the only...
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
With P. Diddy, and this is the reason why I almost never trust anybody except for a few people at work when they tell me news of the outside world, as it be.
Yeah.
I was told that P. Diddy, correction, I overheard. I wasn't told.
Fair.
I overheard that P. Diddy was... and this was the joking context that it was said in, diddled some minors.
That's been brought up.
Okay. I wasn't sure if
that's been brought up.
because I haven't heard about him beating a woman. That is new to me.
Yeah, that's been brought up. There's been all kinds of things said, but nothing's been concreted as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
At the same time, I haven't looked much into it because, again, I don't
We don't
give a
care.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Honestly,
give a shit.
I didn't even know who Pete Diddy was until I saw a magazine cover
Yeah.
and it said P. Diddy lawsuit on it, and I was just like, P. Diddy. Who the fuck's P. Diddy
Now keep
again?
in mind, you saw that on a magazine cover.
Yeah.
She just said no one in the press was covering it, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
But like the same week
The
that it
magazine
happened, the
that-
magazine.
The magazine that you would have seen it on would have been a national publication like People or something like that.
Yeah, it was People, actually,
Yeah.
I believe.
That's a national and worldwide publication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The internet is full of jokes about because you know
Yeah.
how the internet is.
Yeah.
They make a meme of everything.
Yeah. If the internet finds a crack in the armor, it gets in that crack.
Yeah.
It may make it larger.
It may close.
It may just, but it's going to drill in.
Yeah.
It's going to drill in like water. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have soggy armor.
Yeah.
At the very least. Well, at any rate, let's start with this one. Mm-hmm. First, Lucian Grange's father changed the family name from Goldstein to Grange either when he was a kid or before he was even born. Second, the LA prosecutor can't make a case on Diddy, as the statute of limitations passed years ago. Also, the lawyer for the man suing both Diddy and Grange filed for dismissal of the case, citing lack of evidence from his client. Candace is using this entire thing to attack this for what it isn't. It seems either baseless or not nearly what she wants it to be, but it harkens to her Christo-Fasc themes. A black artist being used by a Jewish boss to gain power over other mostly black artists and having his way in a sex ring. I didn't bother cutting the clip, but she claims that her pushing this story may have been why she was booted from the Daily Wire, which makes this now the third possible reason they let her go. I just see her pursuit of it as more evidence of her Christo-Fasc brain. Candace moves on and spends over 10 minutes talking about a TikTok person that had a problem with a celebrity wedding dress. It was boring and beneath us, so I skipped it. She goes on to defend the Tate brothers, not engaging with that either, and she reveals that BET pulled a copyright strike on her NASA episode.
Wait.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
Did they actually?
Yeah, they did. They did.
Fucking awesome.
Here's the deal. They pulled the copyright strike on the NASA episode because she ran a clip without permission from the recent BET Awards to make fun of a thing that had VP Harrison, the host of the show. So they had to edit that out of the show, but it's still on the audio. And I have it saved in various places, as I do with all of this shit. And now we get on to the next day.
That's great.
Isn't it? I laughed real hard when I first heard that, too. I was like, oh my god, good for BET.
Which, the whole satanic NASA thing,
Yeah.
I actually spurred on a furthered idea in my head for a D&D thing.
Uh-huh.
So I'm actually just a modicum happy that I could pull away with something useful
from that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's my fantasy of, pentagrams inside of a engine system.
I mean, it makes sense if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, in the scope of that universe. So, episode 21 asks the question in the title. Is this the end of Jordan Peterson? First off, no. Unfortunately, for those somehow unaware, Jordan Peterson is a college professor in Canada who wrote a couple of books and had a YouTube channel for a while. He had a large audience, but it went down over time as his life unraveled. Because I disagreed with most of his views and still do, I haven't paid him much attention in the last few years. Apparently, he recently pissed off the alt-right with some pro-Israel posts after the attack by Hamas on Israel on October 7th, and he's been having a Twitter beef with Nick Fuentes. Normally, this would be another Alien versus Predator situation for this show where we acknowledge the fight and move on, but the spiral of it gets a lot of airtime on Candace, and since she tried to feign not knowing who Nick Fuentes is way back in episode 8 of this show, and I proved there was no way that shit was possible, we do have a responsibility to keep an eye on the situation. Anyway, both of these guys suck. Peterson just tends to suck a little less. Candace starts the show by mentioning that Peterson has always been nice to her, and they've interacted personally several times. Over the course of several minutes, she lays out how high his fame got and how he has started to spiral downward in matters related to his mental state. All of it was public enough that anyone interested can look it up. Candace goes on to mention that Jordan Peterson called for Benjamin Netanyahu to, quote, give them hell on Palestine after the October 7th, 2023 attack. She claims he lost a lot of his Muslim audience, and she sets us up for a Twitter beef between Michaela Peterson, who is Jordan Peterson's daughter, and Nick Fuentes. Some context here. Candace went on at length about how JP built his brand on free speech absolutism, and he got blowback from the alt-right on Twitter based on his support of Israel. His daughter Michaela called for Twitter, not the government, Twitter, a private corporation, to censor the hate speech flying about. Apparently, this pissed off Candace's buddy Nick Fuentes, and I want to start I want to mention before I start this clip is over 5 minutes long. I wanted to cut it, but it shows the build-up and the hoops she is willing to jump through for this friend of hers, and Ye's, against her old friend that is currently pissed off her fan base.
Was when Nick Fuentes, who is considered the leader of the Groyper movement, wrote this in response to her. He wrote, "Your dad literally called me a rat last week. Thank you for exposing yourself and revealing who you really work for. Both of you freaks should be deported to Israel since you love it so much they can have you." And he attached a tweet from Jordan Peterson where Jordan Peterson did in fact write this to Nick Fuentes. He wrote, "You, at Nick Fuentes, really are a psychopathic rat." So yeah, now we're in a conflict here. She is calling for the censorship of her father, right? I mean, if you're saying the standard is just calling somebody a rat, and it is not just because it is a phrase that's being directed at Jews, but because calling people rats is wrong, then your father would have to be censored. And so when Nick Fuentes raised this obvious conundrum to her, here's what she wrote back. She wrote back, "Oh my God, were you called a rat? Did that hurt? I work for myself, you loser, and I know that Jews' success is due to their above average IQ. But I'm sure blaming a nation of people for your failings is easier for you." I'm sorry, what? So now she's like, yeah, you're a rat, or did that hurt your feelings? That just doesn't seem like a stable or a rational response to someone pointing out the fact that your father just said something that you're calling for censorship for. Or are you saying that it should only be censored if it is being directed at a person that is Jewish? She's not clear on that, but what is clear is that Jordan Peterson jumped into this and doubled down on calling somebody a rat. Here's what he wrote. He wrote, "I apologize for calling you a rat, Nick Fuentes. Rats are just animals. They happen to be an enemy of mankind. So they are like you in that regard, but they are merely acting on instinct, whereas you are motivated by a willful ignorance so deep that it's kind of a miracle, in combination with a profound malevolence. So I was unfair to the rats. Hence my apology. Take note, Michaela." He further added, "I don't regret the psychopath moniker, however. You and your followers, I know your type, buddy boy, but you don't know mine." Okay, so parking aside the fact that it's written in sonnet form, which is something that I don't quite understand why he's doing that, Jordan Peterson has built himself as somebody who is calm, who is rational, who relies on logic, who is a person who believes in radical free speech. He's now coming to the aid of his daughter and essentially doubling down on calling, this is again a 62-year-old man, calling a 24-year-old a rat. And what is the reason, by the way? Because we should also say what is it that Nick Fuentes said that garnered that response from Jordan Peterson. And Nick Fuentes wrote one word on Twitter. He wrote Jews. Now, what was that in response to? Well, somebody asked the question. We know that Joe Biden is not in control of the White House, so who is in control of the White House? And Nick Fuentes wrote a one-word response, Jews. He's saying Jews are in control of the White House, and that garnered a response from Jordan Peterson calling him a psychopathic rat. Now, we all know that Nick Fuentes has branded himself as somebody who expressly hates Zionism. He expressly hates Israel, and he is saying that Jews in the White House are now obviously in control because Joe Biden is not. Now, to be fair, the Times of Israel has noted in the past, this is an actual article from them, all the Jews Biden has tapped for top roles in his new administration. This is from back in 2021 when Joe Biden first was inaugurated as president. And it goes on to say, Joe Biden filled the months before Inauguration Day, lining up a slate of cabinet secretaries, assistants, and advisors, many of them Jewish. It goes on to give us a rundown of all of the Jewish names, all of the Jews that they are saying are in his cabinet. You have Anthony Blinken, you have David Cohen, the CIA director, you have Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, you have Avril Haines, the Director of National Intelligence, you have Ronald Klain, the Chief of Staff. So it seems a weird tweet for him to be so disturbed about. Now, again, It's likely because Nick Fuentes has a very long background of focusing his attention on Israel and Zionism, and that's what he is reacting to. Also because Nick Fuentes has called out Jordan Peterson explicitly for a very long time as somebody who he believes has more of an allegiance to Israel than he does to Western civilization in general. Essentially, that he would put Israel before he would put Canada and before he would put America. Now, I don't know if that's a fair critique of Jordan Peterson, but I do know that it is off-brand for him to respond by calling someone a psychopathic rat. I mean, calling somebody a name, calling somebody an animal when you are billing yourself, right, as the calm, rational psychologist, doctor who insists on logic and that the better ideas should win is just going to be off-brand.
Yeah. Thoughts before we continue?
Honestly, on the whole thing of him calling him a psychopathic rat.
Yeah.
Okay. Following the logic, as she had said, of, somebody who prides themselves in being a psychologist that takes all of the rational, decisions and all that.
Yeah.
If he just somewhere out of the blue is calling somebody a psychopathic rat, correction, just a psychopath, because that's an insult to rats, apparently.
Right.
He's probably already considered all of the possible rational options and tried to figure out some way to justify the man in his own mind.
Yeah.
And the only thing he can come back with is he's just a psychopath.
Well, I think I think rat was a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
Because Jews in the Holocaust were referred to by Nazis as rats.
Okay.
Vermin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he could have been waiting for the moment to say, rats are actually this. I would have thought he would have gone maybe something more like a cockroach, but I think rat was more of a directed term.
Yeah.
Because he knows Nick Fuentes knows the history of Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
He knows the history of the Nazis. He knows that shit. So, yeah, I think, again, this would normally be AVP for me and may not give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
But because she's defending him so hard and trying to explain it in a way that really makes people not hate Nick Fuentes,
yeah,
I felt like I had to include it.
Of course.
So, Candace goes on to say that all of this happened because JP hasn't lived his life according to his own stated principles, and so he is losing his market share of the alt-right fanboys he used to have that have moved on to Tate and Fuentes. But she wants to have him on her show anyway to give him a chance to clear the air. Peterson, that is.
Mm-hmm.
Candace goes on to do an ad for Pure Talk Wireless and for a new t-shirt on offer on her website. I'm not going to play the ad because it and what she is selling is a callback to her bullshit about Brigitte Macron, and I refuse to engage with it. But I did go to her website, and the shirt is in poor taste. But I found something else there that I want to keep an eye on. Her channel on YouTube crested over 2 million accounts, but she's still trying to move those stupid Stanley Cup knockoffs, signed and unsigned. Same prices, too, which is not how a person is supposed to move discontinued merch.
Wait.
$60 and $150.
What? No, the sale. What was the sale?
Oh, for what?
You had said the same price of something.
Oh yeah, no, it was the same price. They're not on sale. At least they weren't at the time of this writing.
Okay, I thought you said they were on sale.
No.
Okay.
She's still trying to move those stupid Stanley Cup knockoffs.
Honestly,
for the same prices. Mm-hmm.
Shit, no, you don't spell Candace with CA. Never mind. I had an idea that I thought would be.
About?
I was going to say call him Chandis.
No.
Sorry, Chanley. That's what
Chanley Cups.
Chanley Cups.
Honestly, I'm surprised she hasn't figured out some other way to do it.
She's calling them Standis, isn't she?
She refers to her fans as people that Standis or if you want to support this show, buy a Standis cup. Yeah. It's a real brain rot situation. I try not to engage with it in light of everything else I have to listen to. Because it'll just be like...
Well, what is she going to call him in the future? Sorry. bystanders or
May-
bystanduses. There we go, bystanduses.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she would call like a black fan of hers a Blandis. I don't know. I just came up with that. I have no idea. God, I hope not. Maybe that'll be the proof that maybe that's how we'll know that she actually listens to the show, or someone on her staff does.
Yeah.
You should call your black fans Blandises. No, don't do that.
Don't do that. Please, for the love of God, don't do that.
For the love of everything, don't do that. So, anyway, Candace goes on at length to discuss how a Parkinson's expert visited the White House 8 times across several months, and she goes on to claim that Biden has Parkinson's. Maybe he does, maybe not. I'm no expert, but it is telling, again, that an expert doctor is useless to her unless it fits a story. The truth is, the doctor in question has served the White House since 2012 and serves not only the office of president but also other active duty people stationed there. As Hillary Clinton would say, this is a nothing burger. And I'll go on to say, too, that the doctor visiting helped the White House craft policy on Parkinson's research and maybe finding a cure for the fucking condition.
Oh.
So, yeah, he wasn't just there to, like, assess the president once a month.
Yeah.
Anyway, as Hillary Clinton would say, this is a nothing burger. But Candace is going to talk almost endlessly about it whenever she can because she can't mention anything about Trump's obvious mental decline. She goes on for about 10 minutes with this shit, and I refuse to engage with it. She moves on to discuss another celebrity I couldn't care less about that has gone maggot, Amber Rose. Now, Amber Rose used to be a girlfriend of Diddy.
Okay.
Yeah, which she barely mentions. She goes on to her comments section of the show, and it was just people agreeing with her, which it almost always is. So I let that go as well. Episode 22 is titled, Russell Brand and I Are Going to Break the Internet.
That...
Go ahead.
That almost sounds a tad bit sexual.
Yeah, it does. And you remember who Russell Brand is, right?
No.
Remember Get Him to the Greek?
Yeah.
He's the him?
Oh. Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's not a douche, is he? I like that movie.
Oh, man, I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Okay. I think we can safely say Get Him to the Greek, which also stars Jonah Hill.
Yeah.
Who has come under fire recently for some tweet or some texts that were shared between him and his ex-girlfriend, I think.
Okay.
Jonah Hill had to walk the shit line for a while.
All right.
Russell Brand has been on the shit end of the periscope for quite a bit.
Okay.
He basically, when his movie career was kind of done, after Arthur and that Peter Rabbit movie or whatever the fuck it was, the bunny movie where he was like the Easter Bunny and he didn't want to be the Easter Bunny, that kind of shit.
Oh, yeah.
Movie where House was the Easter Bunny and he's trying to transfer it off to his kid.
Wait.
House was the older Easter Bunny.
House was the older Easter Bunny in that one? Oh, I didn't...
And Cyclops was the human buddy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then Arthur, which co-starred Jennifer Garner.
Yeah, that was the Arthur reboot, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I honestly liked the Arthur reboot.
Honestly, yeah, it was.
I liked the Arthur reboot. I liked Get Him to the Greek. I liked another film that had his character from Get Him to the Greek.
Yeah.
Called Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Okay.
That's really good. Mm-hmm. He's decent in that. He's much more minor role in that, but he's pretty good in that. Jonah Hill's in that one as well. Again, minor role and a different character.
Okay.
Than Get Him to the Greek. But so, and he was also really good in the musical comedy Rock of Ages.
See, I haven't seen Rock of Ages.
That's pretty good. Him and Alec Baldwin have like a burgeoning gay relationship in the movie. And it's pretty funny. Tom Cruise is one of the best one of the best actors in that film.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's this shitbag rock star. And he's so un-Tom Cruise. It's worth... Rock of Ages is worth seeing at least once. One of my favorite lines in the movie is the lead guy and the lead girl, they kind of break up and then they meet back together after some time. And the girl mentions that she's working as like a stripper or something like that. I don't remember. It was years ago. But the guy has one of the best lines because they're comparing how shitty their lives have gotten since they broke up.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm doing this for a living," and he goes, "I'm in a boy band." And she's like, "Okay, you win." It's so good. It's such a good fucking moment. I was like, "All right." That plus Tom Cruise was worth the price of admission on this thing. But yeah, no, the movie's great. He had a decent movie career. We liked a lot of his shit.
I think it would probably come down to what I have to do with Disturbed now, thanks to the lead singer of that one, and it's separate the person from the character and just enjoy the content and ignore the person.
Yeah, kinda. So
to the best of my ability.
Well, here in this episode, Candace is going to spend time discussing George Clooney and Violet Affleck, Ben Affleck's daughter. She'll also be discussing Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck, because, they were married forever.
Yeah.
Aside from the thread connecting the Clooney Batman to Batfleck to Elektra, I couldn't care less about what Candace has to say about much of any of them, so we won't be messing with that too much.
Wasn't Batfleck also Daredevil?
He was.
Yeah.
That's where he met Elektra.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so we won't be messing with that too much. But during the cold open, we get this teaser.
Last week it was, she's a flat earther! But today the Zionist media is trying to convince the public that I'm worse than a flat earther. I'm, you guessed it, a Holocaust denier. When will they ever grow tired of these games? I know that I won't. That's what's coming up on Candace.
Yeah, so after the theme music, we get this gem.
He wakes up in the morning, he's got tons of text messages from journalists asking for clarity. Is it true? Did Candace say this? How could she say this? And everybody knows what's happening. They're watching the show, journalists, every minute of the show, and they're looking for just a 4-second clip that they can take out of context and spin it and send it around to all of their journalist friends. And we have a cell of Zionist media. We have people that are working to further the interests of Israel, and that is why they keep taking me out of context. But I literally don't care. I just hope they understand that I'm built of evil.
I'm built different. Oh, we understand, Candace. It's why I am willing to play your garbage takes for minutes at a time. I want people to understand how and why she is terrible. This particular clip I just played about the Zionist media says a lot. Anyway, moving on a bit, Candace goes on at length about how she was on Russell Brand's podcast recently and how it went for 3 hours. We might not get to cover it here in full, but I think that might be a mercy. See, right now as I write this, it's only viewable in full on locals.com. Candace has been pushing Locals since she was on Daily Wire. I went there recently because, as I am wont to do, I wanted to see if maybe this show, could be put on there because the idea of getting money on a platform that hosts her made me laugh.
That's fair. Also, locals.com sounds like honestly, it sounds like a dating app for getting to. And I hate that I'm creating a dating app in my head for this. Of let's say I want to find somebody within the neighborhood that we're in right now, and I just input my information, and hey, it tells me what local women in the area are interested in my kind of person.
Like all of those ads that run on Facebook.
Yeah.
Cougars in your area are interested. If you're in the right area of the country, a cougar in your area is not a healthy thing. It's a, oh shit, get the rifle.
Yeah.
There's big cats outside.
Glad you clarified the big cats at the end.
Yeah. So, no worries. I'm definitely not going to be putting the show on locals.com. Locals, I think I can best describe it as hard right to alt-right Patreon. The fact that Candace openly pushes her page there should have been a clue. But when I started clicking through to see who else was there, I was greeted with page after page after page of nut jobs, hacks, and the worst people alive that I happen to know about because of this shit. Some names people might recognize: James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, Stefan Molyneux, Steven Crowder, Scott Adams, Tulsi Gabbard, Russell Brand, and literally dozens, if not hundreds more. Basically, if you have ever heard the name of a hard-right or alt-right shitbag, that's where they are. Locals was founded by Dave Rubin and friends after a friend of theirs, who was known as Sargon of Akkad, was tossed off of Patreon for being himself, which is an insufferable racist asshole. So they literally made a place for their kind that I didn't know about until I went looking for Candace bullshit. Anyway, that diversion aside, I'm not going to pay to hear Russell Brand and Candace expound on the following clip. I will warn all of you ahead of time. He's supposed to be sober and clean, but if this is him clean, he must have been a terrible drunk.
And we had an amazing conversation, and I'm telling you, it's going to break the internet. People will be extremely upset. I think he said it's coming out in a few days, but I did want to bring you a moment from it because I can do that. I can give you guys a little premiere of that conversation. Take a listen. These are the bad guys. The Christians are always the bad guys. Every time you learn about Christian history, we're always the bad guys. You learn about the Spanish Inquisition, we're lied about what actually took place then because it makes Catholics and Christians look bad. You know, we're told that about the Dark Ages and the Age of Enlightenment, the Dark Ages weren't dark. It was an age of remarkable Christian progress, a remarkable Christian experimentation. And so I am just very passionate now about using my platform to awaken Christians around the world, because I believe that when Christians are awakened, a lot of the evils in the world will stop.
It feels to me that perhaps some of the things you are describing, and you're describing a lot of things, Candice, are perhaps because in some ways Christianity, through its various forms of institutionalization, became meshed onto power, whether that's through Roman Catholicism and the establishment of the Vatican, or even the conversion of Constantine. It seems that the point that power and Christianity melded together, political power, I suppose I mean, that there was a complexity that means, at least now, that we truly are living in an individualistic, materialistic, progressive, and late rational, post-Enlightenment age, that Christianity is sort of in the quagmire with old discarded ideas, somehow replaced with some of the forms of progressivism that you in your previous incarnation focused on quite heavily. And I suppose there's an assumption that Christianity doesn't require any protection, doesn't require any special spaces. I've heard people say, for example, that like this return to Christianity that seems to be happening culturally, this new intrigue and excitement, a kind of a new awakening, a sort of what might be what precedes a second coming or a rapture, is an attempt by the culture to reboot the last thing that works. True Christianity, Candice, would by its nature be anti-establishment, somehow challenging to people in positions of power and to powerful institutions. It seems that you've embraced this aspect of Christianity, but when you look at the modern political stage, with like what's happening in my country, a new centralist, authoritarian, globalist government coming to power with an extraordinary portion of the votes, what's happened in France, a kind of machination and alloying of political groups in order to maintain Macron's centrist, authoritarian, globalist power, that what is required is a kind of inversion, a new radicalism, and yet the only type of radicalism that's sort of discussed is either technological radicalism and advanced citizen management, or maybe Islam. I wonder what you think about the necessity for this new Christian awakening to become politicized, or at least to become a challenge to existing political power.
Why Russell Brand? Why?
Oh, he's been that way for years.
I thought Get Him to the Greek was just it's like a joke, but I can see that being a legitimate thing now.
Here's the thing, he was sober when he did that movie. He was clean and sober. He's clean and sober these days. And if that's him clean and sober, I want him back on the sauce.
Yeah, it was... God. I mean, if we ever run out of Candace content, we know who to go to next, because we can just make a secondary podcast.
No. I will stick with the name Gish Gallop Girl until I'm dead.
Okay. See, I was going to say if need be, we could make a,
because I could just any of these people are a Gish Gallop Girl.
Fair enough. Yeah, because he just did a British Gish Gallop there.
Oh my God, he did.
God, that.
Imagine
Okay.
people are paying to hear 3 hours of that at a time.
Okay, look. If there was, what was his name again? Okay, the guy that played Severus Snape.
Uh-huh.
If he had a podcast where he just rambled on some bullshit,
Yeah. Rest in peace, Alan Rickman.
yes, rest in
Yeah.
peace, Alan Rickman. I would listen to it and probably not give a shit about what the fuck he's talking about because he's got one of those voices that you can listen to.
Well,
for a couple
my
of
favorite,
hours.
my favorite role
But-
of his, aside from Die Hard, may he be praised,
Oh yeah, yeah.
was Dogma.
Oh yeah, he was in Dogma.
He was the voice of God in Dogma.
yeah.
He was the. Fuck me, I don't want to fuck it up. I know it's not the metronome, but it's something like that. But yeah, he was the voice of God in Dogma,
Okay.
and God was played by Alanis Morissette, which we know to be true.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, all hail Alanis. But yeah, like I would listen to Alan Rickman read the fucking phone book.
Yeah.
In fact, it's a shame that he didn't just do that as a recording before he died,
Yeah.
because that would have been.
God,
I would have paid for that.
There was a there was a joke thing that was made of Alan Rickman's voicemail,
Yeah.
and I really want to find that thing on the internet and just see if I can't change my voicemail to sound like that.
You might be able to.
Because I'd love to have Alan Rickman's fucking voicemail set to that. But okay. As for the whole, we did nothing bad during the Dark Ages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
Spanish
ag-
Inquisition and
Again, I want you to keep in mind here.
the Crusades.
Yeah. No. See, I want you to keep in mind here. I'm not defending her.
The Crusades.
Okay. I'm not defending her. Here's the thing. Candace would be behind the Crusades. Because as a Catholic, as a new Catholic, and you have to remind yourself what her mindset is. She's into all that shit. To her, the Protestant Reformation and the Age of Enlightenment were sinful things that should not have occurred. Because she's so pro-Catholic and so Christo-Fascist that she wants to see a fascist state based on Christianity, as she sees it, which is Catholicism.
See, that... Okay. I'm all for Crusader armor, and I love the Crusader memes of,
Yeah.
you hear Deus Vult playing, and now it's time for another crusade.
Right.
Like, I love all of that sort of media, but the people that are like, yeah, I'd like another crusade, and it's like, I'm talking about the video game, man.
Yeah.
What are you going on
Yeah.
about? No, I mean,
no,
like, seriously,
yeah.
we should just charge into Israel and retake it. For who?
Yeah.
Who are we taking Israel for here? What are you...
Yeah, and here's the thing, too. That would involve killing so many people that have such good culture.
Yeah.
That
it would be doing a crusade.
Yeah.
'Cause...
Like, and and that's what I hear in her shit a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so. And then Candace goes on to spend more time on her history lessons.
Be able to hear my answer to that when he drops the interview, but here's what I will say. I'm very aware of why I'm being attacked. Obviously, they don't think I'm a Holocaust denier, no more do they believe that I am a flat earther, but they understand that I am talking about Christian concepts. I am talking about Christian history. I'm talking about the fact that Christians were mass murdered across Europe, and that Americans were sold lies about that murder. And so they've taken out of context a clip because what they don't want people to see is the BBC documentary that I went over in that episode, The Savage Peace, learning that German civilians, German Christians were murdered in mass by the Allies. This has been hidden. Most Americans don't know it, and most Americans have been shocked to learn it. And so they want me gone because, then what fall?
I'm going to pause that here for a second to remind the audience that most of Germany profess to be Christians, either Protestant or Catholic. So, yes, German Christians that were Nazis were killed by the Allies by whatever standard it took to get them to surrender. That is true, but not in the way that she makes it sound.
Yeah.
So, keeping on going.
Apart, of course, is this entire narrative that we're always fighting the bad guys. Here's what I believe. I believe it is and always has been a holy war. I believe that there are spiritual forces at play that are trying to make Americans atheistic and make Americans believe in nothing other than government, more governance as a solution to everything. And the more I look into history and start examining it through the lens of Christianity, I am shocked by what I discover. Let's talk about World War II. Ready? I actually think that if I were to write a book about America, American involvement in the history of war, in the history of World War II, I would entitle it, Oops, we accidentally bombed Christians again. And the subtitle would be, but it's an accident. It was a total accident, I swear. Or it didn't matter, I swear. Or, but we had to do it, I swear. Yeah, unbelievably, when you start looking through the lens of Christianity, you begin to ask yourself a question, how many times can you accidentally bomb a Christian monastery or a Christian cathedral before we're allowed to wonder if maybe, it wasn't an accident at all? If maybe it was an actual strategy. If maybe Christians in the West were propagandized severely by Edward Bernays, as Sigmund Freud's nephew, as we were during World War II, to permit the mass atrocities that were enacted against Christians in the East. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, so here's a history lesson.
I've been asking those questions for a while now. I'm now just asking them out loud. It began really for me when I was on that charter pilgrimage. And you remember I did that 3-day pilgrimage with Catholics, and we marched to Charter, the Charter Cathedral, that is. It's got a wonderful story. In August of 1944, American forces were approaching Charters, and they believed, because of bad intelligence, that the cathedral's towers and steeples were being used by the enemy. And somebody that was in their ranks said, okay, I actually don't know if this intel is good. They were told that building must be destroyed. There are Nazis in there. But before the bombardment was ordered, Colonel Wellborn Barton Griffith Jr., he's a hero, volunteered himself because he felt so conflicted about that order. He said, I will sneak through the German lines to see if this intel is true or not. He, and he took another troop along with him, successfully evaded the enemy, climbed the towers of the cathedral, and confirmed that there were no enemies at all. No. So the bombardment order was rescinded. Charter Cathedral still stands.
Now, elements of this are true. Candace almost makes it sound like there were no Nazis there. They had, in fact, been using the cathedral as a base of operations for 4 years. So it was a threat. But the colonel and his driver did determine there were no snipers present, so it didn't get bombed. That same colonel was killed later that day after the order to bomb the building was rescinded. And then we get...
But to be clear, that is not the story for the majority of the cathedrals that were bombarded throughout World War II. Here's another story, and you may have heard it. If you're Catholic, you probably know it. Monte Cassino in Italy. Same thing happened. The Allied forces were given intelligence that the Germans were going to use Monte Cassino. What? No, that bombard it. It was ambiguous information regarding the Germans' location that was believed to be valid. However, up to the last days before the bombing, Martino Matronolo, who was a monk who remained at Monte Cassino, asserted that no, it is not being used by anybody. No, this is just our monastery with a tremendous history behind it. But guess what? Despite the fact that an American contested and said we absolutely should not bomb this, it still happened. They bombed the abbey, and monks were trapped in it while it was bombed. But don't worry, guys. Guardian headline has got this covered. Look, here it is. Error led to the bombing of Monte Cassino. Monastery destroyed after translation slip by the British intelligence officer. It just kept happening. It was an error. It was bad intel, and the translation it didn't make it over in the correct way. And I guess the American troops couldn't understand the British accent or something. Of course, the theater in Cologne was not as lucky. That was also bombed by the Allies in 1944, as was the Königsberg Cathedral, obliterated by the Soviets in 1944. And Nobody cares because I guess they were Germans. I'm sure it was all just a coincidence, by the way. What?
Yeah, so I looked into these claims as well. The Abbey at Monte Cassino was bombed because of bad intel, and the other places, but many cathedrals in Europe were avoided whenever possible by Allied bombing raids, and it is thought that air crews didn't want to directly bomb a church, hideout or not. But I noticed something while cutting these clips that I didn't notice the first time, and that is that Candace doesn't call them what they were, which is Nazis. She specifically calls the Nazis Germans. This is a coded and specific choice of words, and she does it time and again.
And in Dresden, as Christians were getting ready to celebrate Ash Wednesday, they were literally turned into ashes. What happened in Dresden was a war crime. There's no other way to look at it. It was an absolute war crime. And yeah, again, just a coincidence that it was Ash Wednesday that this happened.
The bombing of Dresden did start on Ash Wednesday in 1945 and went from February the 13th to the 15th. Over 1,000 planes were used to drop bombs on the city by UK and US forces. There were a lot of civilians killed in the bombing, and it's questionable whether or not it needed to happen, since the Nazis were on the retreat from combined Soviet and Allied forces. The city itself was an important manufacturing hub for the Nazi war machine. It had over 120 factories.
Okay.
And so it was bombed. It's easy to look at it many decades later and call it a war crime, but at the time I think it was used as a potent message. I'm not defending it, just trying to see it from a neutral view. Candace's position is that because Christians were killed, it was bad. Moving on.
And of course, if you talk about Nagasaki, people get really upset on Twitter. Oh no, Zionist media is going to come for me hard because how dare you, Candace? How dare you talk about Nagasaki? Because that too was just things happened, you know. They were going to bomb somewhere else, and then they don't know who gave the orders, but somebody said do Nagasaki instead. So on a cloudy morning, on August, I guess the priests in Hiroshima were luckier.
To be fair to her here, just to pause for a second, the word Morgan is the Norse word for morning.
Yeah.
So she's not totally off on that slip up. But
Yeah.
anyway, moving on.
Here's an aerial view of the Lady of the Assumption Church after the August 6th, 1945 bomb drop. Yep, another nuke dropped. Unfortunately, a small group of priests can be seen standing in the road in front of their church. Despite being at the epicenter of the bombing, having just completed their mass on Sunday, these Jesuit priests survive.
I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Is
I've looked into this, but go ahead.
Is she claiming a holy miracle
Yeah.
stopped the force and radiation of a nuclear bomb?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's so much to get through on that.
That correction, it wasn't a nuclear bomb. Technically, it was a hydrogen bomb.
Wait, was that hydrogen or just atomic?
Yeah. I thought it was a hydrogen.
I don't know.
Either way.
I don't think it matters. It was a big dumb bomb. But
I think it was a hydrogen. No.
whatever.
Fuck.
Look, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's gonna bother me.
Then look it up later.
Yeah. But nonetheless.
Yeah.
She's claiming holy miracle protected.
I had to go so deep onto this
Okay.
that I want to relay it. So let me just...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, here's some facts. President Harry S. Truman ultimately ordered the atomic bombing of Nagasaki on August 9th, 1945. Here are the key points regarding the decision. On July 25th, 1945, President Truman authorized the use of atomic bombs against Japan. This order was issued by Acting Army Chief of Staff Thomas Handy to General Carl Spaatz, allowed for the use of atomic bombs on multiple Japanese cities as soon as weather permitted after August the 3rd, 1945. Nagasaki was not the primary target for the second atomic bomb. The original target was Kokura, but due to poor visibility over that city, the B-29 bomber Boxcar diverted to the secondary target of Nagasaki. The decision to use the second bomb was made on August 7th, 1945 on Guam, just one day after the bombing of Hiroshima. While Truman gave the initial authorization, The specific order to drop the bomb on Nagasaki was carried out through the military chain of command. Major Charles Sweeney, pilot of the boxcar, made the final decision to bomb Nagasaki when Kokura could not be targeted. The use of the second bomb was intended to demonstrate that the United States had multiple atomic weapons and would continue to use them until Japan surrendered unconditionally. Now, next we get a really incredible story. It takes her some time to get through, but the payoff at the end was worth the trip, and that was the story about those guys. So looking up the facts on this one took some digging, but the most popular results about this story were on Catholic sites with questionable history and aims. But I found a breakdown of the truth over at skeptics.stack exchange. Let me open the hyperlink. Yeah, the question was, did 8 Jesuits survive the nuking of Hiroshima without serious injury? So yeah, they said on there, it is being frequently claimed by Catholic sources, such as Catholic News Agency and Catholic Herald, that 8 Jesuit priests survived the nuking of Hiroshima with very minor physical damages, in spite of them being located very close to ground zero. It is also claimed that they did not experience any bad long-term effects of radiation. The top answer, yes, they survived the blast. No, their survival was not unexplainable. The Jesuits were at 2 locations. They resided at the Novitiate of the Society of Jesus in Nagatsuki, 2 kilometers from the edge of the city and 3 kilometers from the epicenter of the blast. But at the time of the explosion, some were at Central Mission and Parish House closer to ground zero. While their survival was uncommon, it was not exceptional. 13% of the 31,200 people living within 1 kilometer of ground zero survived the blast. According to, and they link this map on Hiroshima and Nagasaki Remembered. And from a paper from Medical Effects of the Atomic Bomb in Japan. According to the Avalon Project at Yale Law School, the central portions of the cities underneath the explosions suffered almost complete destruction. The only surviving objects were the frames of a small number of strong reinforced concrete buildings which were not collapsed by the blast. Most of these buildings suffered extensive damage from interior fires, had their windows, doors, and partitions knocked out, and all other fixtures which were not integral parts of the reinforced concrete frames were burned or blown away. The casualties in such buildings near the center of the explosion were almost 100%. The novitiate was on a hill above the city of Hiroshima. The parish house was in the city next to the church school. Both Seams and Father Wilhelm Kleinsgorge say the wooden structures built by Brother Gropper were heavily reinforced due to Gropper's concerns about earthquakes. Kleinsgorge later related his experiences to reporter John Hersey, whose Hiroshima was published in the New Yorker. So, the survivors from the parish house later told Seams about their experience. The church, school, and all buildings in the immediate vicinity collapsed at once. Valuables were removed from the rubble and buried in a clearing to protect them from the spreading fires. Father Schiffer was buried beneath a portion of a wall and suffered a severe head injury. The Father Superior received most of the splinters in his back and lower extremity from which he bled copiously. Kleinsgorge and another priest soon display symptoms of what may be radiation exposure. So, Seams was doubtful of radiation's effects and suspected the poor healing was due to malnutrition. Kleinsgorge suffered terribly. John Hersey relates the story of what happened to the priest, dating it to about 3 weeks after the explosion as he was walking back from an errand. His knees grew weak, he felt excruciatingly tired. With a considerable expenditure of spirit, he managed to reach the novitiate. He did not think his weakness was worth mentioning to the other Jesuits. But a couple of days later, while attempting to say Mass, he had an onset of faintness, and even after 3 attempts was unable to go through with the service. And the next morning, the rector, who had examined Father Kleinsgorge's apparently negligible but unhealed cuts daily, asked in surprise, "What have you done to your wounds?" They had suddenly opened wider and were swollen and inflamed. These 4, Kleinsgorge and 3 other survivors, did not realize it, but they were coming down with the strange, capricious disease which came later to be known as radiation sickness. Kleinsgorge would be hospitalized in Tokyo for 4 months and was back in the hospital a year later. Suffering from fever, diarrhea, and utter exhaustion, Kleinsgorge's was a classic case history of A-bomb sickness. but he bore this life of misery with the most extraordinarily selfless spirit, continuing the self-abnegating pastoral life. In 1961, his energy finally flagged and he developed liver dysfunction, high blood pressure, back and chest pains. On his hospital chart in 1976 was written, "a living corpse." He died the next year. As of 2007, there were 226,598 officially certified survivors of the atomic bombing still alive in Japan, according to Link Children of the Atomic Bomb. So, yeah.
It was both A-bombs, I looked at.
Yeah, it was both A-bombs, but yeah, they so yeah, like that's just a myth that they survived with no, problems or anything.
Yeah.
They weren't near the center of the blast. They were like 3 kilometers away from it. Mm-hmm. And the building survived, and yeah, the guys got fucking radiation sickness because a fucking atomic bomb blew up, within their vicinity, and they had to be priests and tend to people and shit.
Like,
so,
I could believe they survived the blast, especially since they were 3 kilometers away.
Yeah, and they're in a reinforced building.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I can't for a single second ever believe that they didn't suffer some ailment from the radiation.
Yeah, they absolutely did. So, yeah, I didn't read through the whole thing. There's way more on that article, but, in the interest of time, that article exists on skeptics.stackexchange.com. Y'all can find it. I'll link it in the show notes. Candace goes on with something not World War II related immediately after. Now, it won't make sense right away, but listen to...
But again, don't think too hard about that. Bad intel and accidents happen all the time. In fact, they're still happening. It's so weird in Canada. Have you heard about this? Do you guys remember when 3 years ago there was that major story that broke in Canada? And basically the left went crazy because it allowed for them to just be openly prejudiced against Christians. They said that they had found a mass grave that was containing the remains of indigenous children that they allegedly discovered beneath a Catholic church, right? So they were like, oh, this used to be a government boarding school run by the Catholic Church. We just dug up these bones of the indigenous people, so now we realize that Catholics were mass murdering indigenous people. Guess what? That entire story turned out to be a hoax. I think.
So, the truth is that while no First Nations remains were found there at Pineview, the larger issue is that survivors of those schools in that system have been telling their stories of abuse, such as sexual stuff, starvings, beatings, and so on, for years. Hundreds of known stories across Canadian Catholic schools from natives. Now, what Candace says next is what made me scream and turn her off for 2 hours. It's Nazi phraseology, and I have never heard it used in any other context, but here you go.
The term that people like to use is a blood libel against Christians. And guess what happened because of that blood libel against Christians?
So yeah, I went nuts for a bit. For those unaware, blood libel is a deeply rooted anti-Semitic myth that falsely accuses Jews of murdering non-Jews, particularly Christian children, to use their blood in religious rituals, especially for baking Passover matzah.
Why would you put blood in matzah?
Yeah.
It ruins the matzah.
It dies on the surface, yeah. It's been a myth for centuries. Yeah. This baseless accusation has led to significant violence and persecution of Jewish communities throughout history. So to hear her use this term just set me the fuck off. When I came back to things, I got to hear...
Again, this is just 3 years ago in Canada. At least 85 Catholic churches across Canada were destroyed by arson, or vandalized, desecrated, and the Canadian political party cheered it on. They were like, yeah, get those Catholics. 85 Catholic churches in Canada have since been destroyed on the basis of a lie that the mainstream media allowed to run freely. Think about that. Think about it.
Nope. More like 33. The only group claiming 85 is, once again, a single Catholic source that does not cite locations, times, reasons, etc. The official source from the Mounties themselves, the RCMP, says 33. I would trust them over the church since they actually have to investigate the fucking crimes. She goes on, of course,
They even raised money supporting the investigation of the mass graves. It was all a lie, it was all a hoax, and nobody cares because it's Christians. And Christians, you are supposed to be subjugated. You are supposed to do the bidding for other religions. In fact, you should be doing the absolute most for other faiths. And if you start speaking out about your faith, if you start recognizing this trend of bad intel and Catholic churches then subsequently being bombed and destroyed and shelled, well, that would make you a problem. That would make you even plausibly a flat-earthing, Holocaust-denying idiot. So don't do that, Christians. Don't start looking at your own history and getting vocal about it. That would make you me. Speaking of Christianity, if there is one thing that...
Does she roll into her ad reel about the Halo?
Hallow app? I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay. Something that I keep catching in there is she doesn't say Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
She refers to Christians. I can tell you, any Christian that isn't a Catholic that I have, like, gone, yeah, you know, Christians, Catholic Church, they immediately, like, they're willing to let go of, okay, you said Christians, I'm a Lutheran.
Yeah.
Not whatever, I don't
Right.
care about Protestants. They're willing to let that go. But the moment you ring the Catholic Church in with them, most of them go,
Yeah.
Catholics are not the same.
Yeah.
They are Catholics.
Meanwhile, Catholics will self-identify as either Catholics or Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're the original church.
Mm-hmm.
That is why you got the Protestants. They were protesting
Yeah.
the church. Thus, that's why it's in the fucking name.
Yeah.
And the Protestants are multi-denominational.
See,
And we're going to get into that and why this all matters. And it's going to blow your fucking mind, because it blew my fucking mind, and I didn't know about it, and now that I do, I feel brain poisoned.
yeah.
So I'm going to spread that brain poison the way we do out to all the listeners as well.
Fair enough.
So, now, I admit I left the church scene decades ago, but I'm pretty sure that Jesus' message wasn't anything like this. I'm fairly certain he was supposed to be a chill dude. But there was at least one notable group of people that wanted more of a warrior Christ. A lot gets said about how the Nazis were Christians, and this is somewhat true. Christians will argue, of course, that it isn't true at all, because look at what they did. And the accepted fact that Jesus was a Jewish man proves the whole thing false. They couldn't have been Christians. But those people usually never dealt with people like this, and they don't realize how far Nazis will go to justify their actions in broad scope. Under the Third Reich, they established a new form of Christian heterodoxy for themselves, just as the English did with the Anglican Church. This was called the Reich Church. It was also known by a lesser ominous name, Positive Christianity. They wanted to unify all the non-Catholic denominations in Germany under a single banner. We're talking Lutherans, Calvinists, and any others they wanted to wrap into a single Nazi church. The obvious question is, how can a Nazi church exist with Jesus Christ, a famous Jewish man, as the figurehead? Simple. They retconned him. Rather than being born of Jewish descent, he was born from a tryst between a Roman legionnaire and a mother that is never brought up, but is assumed to have been a non-Semitic person. They tried to un-Jew Christ.
Also, they unchristed Christ too, because he's supposed to be God's son, not a Roman legionnaires.
Yeah.
Like they didn't just unjew him. They unchristed him.
Yeah.
Where does he get his holy powers if not from his father?
Well, Germany had tens of thousands of churches, and only about 3,000 pastors signed on to this view of the Bible. But I think it is notable that the rhetoric being spewed by Candace, Nick Fuentes, and so many others is reflective of a lot of elements of this period. The Nazi church sought to do away entirely with the Old Testament and painted Jesus as a man that tried through religious means to overthrow the yoke of Judaism from the Aryan people of the Middle East. They paint his image as a warrior scholar rather than a healer and pacifist. I didn't know this stuff until I started looking into whether or not Nazi Christian ideals were different and how. Fortunately, in the field of Nazi historical study, this is a well-known thing and there's plenty of scholarly information on it. But Candace is a Catholic and not a Protestant. So it's also no secret that the Catholic Church officially stood still while the Holocaust and other persecutions took place in Germany and Poland and everywhere else. Reasons for and against this are well known enough that I don't feel the need to go into it further. I just wanted to point out that this warrior Christ, and to a larger and more scary extent, warrior Christian mindset is not new, certainly, but it is ramping up. It's hard to listen to Candace and Nick Fuentes and Alex Jones, Tucker, and so many others use the Reich Christian type of wording that they do, while professing to be either neutral or full Catholics, and I don't like that the Catholic Church isn't denouncing them. I would be okay with them not naming people directly, but they aren't making statements about the hatred not coming from the church itself, from Fuentes and other figures like Candace. So to me, that might as well be more complicity. Further on, Candace goes into what we talked about earlier, her bad takes on celebrities. She spends almost 15 minutes telling us her thoughts on Affleck, Violet Affleck, and Clooney. Not bothering with it, we move on to Candace user questions, and we get this about Nick Fuentes.
So if you're a regular viewer of the show, you know by now that the Tuttle Twins is one of the sponsors.
Hold on.
So if you're a regular viewer of the show...
Okay, for whatever reason, it's not going to play it. But she talks about Groypers. So Candace tries to fake not knowing who Groypers are. Do you know who Groypers are?
No.
Okay. Well, she says, I don't even know why they're called that. I don't know anything about it. Well, I do now. It was pretty easy to fucking look up.
All right.
Groyper is the name given to the bastardized version of Pepe the Frog that symbolizes their movement. They use the symbol often and are known fanboys of Fuentes. Again, giving her association with him, I refuse to believe that she doesn't know about them. Candace ends the episode with some more comments about Jordan Peterson, but then we get into episode 23 of her show. She starts by giving a long explanation of her interview with Don Lemon, which lasts through much of the content on this episode. I'm not trying to gloss over it here because the segments she plays aren't good for her, but she just uses that platform to shout out her conspiracy drivel about JFK, and unrelated, her consistent lies about the post-World War II killings of Nazis and Germans across Europe. See what I did there?
Mm-hmm. The Nazis and Germans.
Yeah, there's a fucking difference between Germans and Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
She goes more into the Jordan Peterson and Twitter stuff by playing a clip from Michaela Peterson, Jordan's daughter, that she posted. Candace spends over 10 minutes on this Twitter beef between the Petersons and Fuentes. I considered cutting and playing the clips of it, but I think I've established my distaste for all parties involved. I did cut one clip, which will be relevant for the next show. I won't play it now. But there is a clip I do want to play. It's Candace running an ad for some kids' books. She's a longtime supporter of the series, but she says something interesting at the end of the clip.
You know by now that the Tuttle Twins is one of the sponsors of the show. There are currently 13 books in this series for children. Ethan and Emily Tuttle learn about complex ideas in ways that are fun and easy to understand, with each book covering a different topic about economics, business, or political philosophy. This week, the Tuttle Twins and the Leviathan Crisis caught my eye. In the story, the Tuttle Twins compare a fantasy-themed game that they had been playing with an economic recession their community is suffering from in the real world. They learn about how political demagogues use fear to get the people to relinquish power and control over their own lives in return for protection and security from a false idol. These are the types of things we all need to clearly understand and articulate if we're going to preserve a free world for our children and grandchildren.
Now, that caught me off guard the first time. It's very similar to the infamous white supremacist 14 words of, we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children.
God, that's a mouthful. Why not, kick it down to, 2? And, I won't say it because I know how people like to clip things. But, WP. I feel like that's just an easier way to...
The way that they have actually shortened it down is by using the number phrase, 1488.
Yeah.
Because that stands for the 14 words, and 8 in the alphabet is H. So it's 14HH. Guess what HH means?
Heil Hitler?
Yeah, you got it.
All right.
So if you see somebody with a 1488 tattoo, or someone responds to some bullshit online with 1488 in any context, The safest question you can ask them is, what happened in 1488? The answer is fucking nothing. Unless they have something that you can immediately pull up on your phone
Yeah.
as being either bullshit or not, it's safe to assume that anyone with a 1488 tattoo or anyone who likes to use 1488 as an argument online is a fucking Nazi.
Okay.
Yeah. We can call them white supremacists, we can call them, fucking Boogaloo Boys or whatever the fuck. They're all fucking Nazis.
See, Boogaloo Boys is just
Just
too
as the
fun.
Germans wanted to unite all Christianity in positive Christianity, we can unite all of the bastards into Nazism. Because that's what it fucking is.
I'm sorry, but the Boogaloo Boys just sounds like a fun swing band, and I hate it.
Right.
Because, I would listen to a song performed by a band called the Boogaloo Boys, and I know I would.
Well, less sobering to that is they came up with that name based on the rhyming scheme Civil War II Electric Boogaloo.
That's a movie, isn't it?
No.
No?
No. Some sort of Groovin' 2 Electric Boogaloo is a movie.
Okay.
It's one of those, we're going to save the rec center by doing a dance-off movies.
Okay.
From the 70s. Or
Alright.
the 80s, maybe. I don't know. I'm not up on it. I've seen it once. It was on Saturday morning fucking TV years ago. But they based it off of the fact that they want their accelerationist mindset. They want another civil war. Because they think this time the South will win. Or whatever constitutes the South now. Their side, basically.
Yeah.
They think this time the Nazis will win. Because if you get right down to it, the southern states, fucking Nazis. Come on.
Yeah.
I
mean, look at Florida.
Yeah. So, Candace ends this show with the Menect question. Keep in mind, this person paid $100 to get responded to.
Holy apostolic faith. Lastly, this came from Nect. Very interesting and definitely a topic I will look into next week because I've been interested in it in general, thanks to that book, Chaos. This is from Danny. He writes, "Hey Candace, you could be potentially speaking to your biggest stands. My wife and I are massive fans from the UK. Firstly, let's start the combo with Crisis King. We appreciate you opening the eyes and minds of the sleeping masses. You are doing an amazing job and God bless you. You have to do an expose on chemtrails. I've been looking into this a lot lately, and we are literally being poisoned from above. Contrails from planes dissipate after a very short time. Chemtrails do not. There are many whistleblower pilots exposing what's happening. The official narrative is that aluminum is being pumped into the sky to reflect the sun to stop global warming. This is absolutely crazy. The aluminum falls from the sky. We breathe it in. It goes into our crops and into the sea. You have a giant fan base. Please get this out to the masses. We need to stop it. Secondly, look into Jane Stanley, BBC correspondent who reported Building 3 coming down before it actually did. The vids are on YouTube. Okay, so what I will say to you is I am interested in that because in that Chaos book, it just something that it flagged in my head was it was speaking about how they had MK Ultra American troops who were coming back talking from the Korean War, speaking about how the American government was involved for the first time in biological warfare. So they say they were spraying from planes and poisoning people. And then obviously you know what happens thereafter, and NASA is established. Nobody really knows what NASA does, but they keep insisting on we went to the moon, so that's why we just give them this sort of black budget. And so I have questions about that, and you are correct. For a very long time they called people that were talking about chemtrails crazy, and then they admitted, okay, no, we do spray the air, but it's for your good. And I just don't think the government is ever doing anything for our good. But that would make me a conspiracy theorist. Yeah. Anyways, guys, we will see you tomorrow. He started.
Yeah.
I thought I'd never hear chemtrails again.
Yeah.
Because I remember all the farm swaps in Florida, and seeing the rednecks smoking their cigarettes, going, man, them chemtrails.
Yeah.
While blowing their smoke in everyone's face, and it's just like, could you take your chemtrail back to your...
They would blame the very symptoms they were experiencing by being lifelong smokers on chemtrails. Yeah. So, that was episode 23. Let's get into the last one of last week. Episode 24. Candace spends the first 1/3 of this episode talking about her beef with Eminem. I don't care about it, so I'm not going to play clips of it.
What?
As it also runs well over 10 minutes long.
What the fuck?
She goes into several minutes rehashing the Twitter feud between Peterson and Fuentes, but then she gets into this.
Trending was because he wrote this post on Twitter, and it's a lot, and he did it again in sonnet form, or in haiku form, or in poetry. Here's what he wrote. The new Nazi troll rats, anonymously trumpeting your anti-Semitism doesn't rescue you from your mother's basement or from the demon of resentment or make you more attractive to the women who take one look at you and shudder, and rightly bloody so. You are despicable, bottom-rung cowards using Gaza, 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 Hamas, Hamas as camouflage for your detestable cluster B psychopathy, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and of course sadism. I've got your number, you pathetic tantrum toddlers. You don't even have the courage of genuine bullies. Your Cheeto dust, sorry to laugh, Cheeto dust covered, sweat stained, white t-shirted, hide behind your mommy skirt scum disgust is wasted on you. Yeah, that's...
Damn.
Yeah.
Sorry, just he's
He went off.
yeah, he's vicious as shit. Jesus Christ.
Oh,
I love
yeah.
it when psychologists, especially ones that actually like did all of their schoolwork
Yeah.
and shit, go off because they have some of the most rip apart a person to their very soul shit that they just spew.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's great. I had to play that. I was like, wow, he really just went for it, man.
Yeah.
So Candace voices more concern about Peterson and reads several comments on the posting, and then says this. Now this clip is 5 minutes long, but it really couldn't be shortened because it shows to what extent she is willing to run cover for this man.
a lot going forward as the Nick Fuentes fallacy, okay? So there is an actual fallacy that is called reductio ad Hitlerum. It's a logical fallacy that's actually a type of an ad hominem attack, and the rationale is essentially guilt by association that's meant to derail arguments and elicit anger from the opponents. Like, I'm basically going to just say, like, Hitler also said this, Hitler dog logic, Hitler also likes dogs, therefore you support Hitler. I cannot believe how much I am seeing this in the conservative side when it comes to Nick Fuentes. So now the argument, the fallacy, is reductio ad Fuentes, right? So they are like, this person, we don't like him, and so when we can't win an argument, we're going to point to the fact that Nick Fuentes also agrees with this argument, and somehow that means we've won. No, it doesn't mean you've won. It's a logical fallacy, and it's obvious. Now, you may not have seen it because I'm sure a lot of my viewers do not listen to Don Lemon, but similarly, Don Lemon and I were having a back and forth, and he threw up a clip of Nick Fuentes. In my opinion, he picked a very weird clip. There's tons of Nick Fuentes clips on the internet. He showed a clip of Nick Fuentes calling me beautiful and calling me intelligent, and then speaking about Jordan Peterson, and he sort of gave me this opportunity. I don't know what he wanted me to do. If he wanted me to say, like, I don't believe in this clip, like, just because me and Nick Fuentes agree on any topic doesn't mean that we agree on all topics, and I'm not going to respond to that fallacy. I'm starting to even see people on the right, and you saw this, even Piers Morgan brought up Nick Fuentes. It's like every interview I do, they're trying to present this opportunity to basically say, but Nick Fuentes also thinks this. And don't you want to denounce Nick Fuentes? Don't you want to disavow Nick Fuentes? I'm like, okay, so if Nick Fuentes says and agrees to the concept that children should not be having trans surgeries, children should not be going under the knife, then I'm supposed to say, oh, well, Nick Fuentes thinks that, so I don't think that anymore. It's nonsense, it's absolute nonsense. Also, by the way, I want to say this very strongly because there is nothing more woke, in my view. Like, if you see a person doing this and they're pretending to be a person on the right or a conservative, you should know that deep down inside they are a leftist, right? They are a leftist. Do you disavow? Think about that from a psychological perspective. Do you disavow this person? I never made a vow to that person, so why would I have to disavow that person? Oh, you just want me to disavow a human being because you're telling me this human being is awful, when in reality, the first people that you should think are highly suspicious are the ones asking you to play their little disavowal game. Because the reason they do that is to try to assert themselves as a lord in your life. Like, I am going to tell you, you're actually going to make a vow to me by agreeing to disavow this person who has the same rational idea as you. Again, giving the I'm using an example here of, like, we should not be censoring the American public. We should not put children under the knife having surgeries because they're confused about their gender. These are logical positions. And like I said, all across the conservative movement, they're starting to use this argument, reductio ad fuentes. And so when they say something that is bad, right, and the public responds to it, case in point, Michaela Peterson, I want censorship of the word filth. And then the public naturally and organically responds to that, and they're infuriated with it. Then they get to hide behind their shell and say, oh, no, look, but also Nick Fuentes disagrees with it. So everyone disagrees with me is a Hitler Nazi Fuentes person. It's a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense because they don't have the courage. They're actually cowards. They do not have the courage to debate their ideas legitimately. That is why it's a fallacy, because they're basically trying to establish a boogeyman that says, ooh, you can't think that too. Fuentes also thinks this. I'm not playing that game. So you can keep cutting clips of Nick Fuentes like Don Lemon did, like Piers Morgan did. Do you disavow? Nope, buddy, I am not going to sit here and disavow someone that I've never made a vow to. It's a nonsense. It's a game. It's a leftist tactic. If there is something that Nick Fuentes has said, and you say, Candace, do you agree with this? I will happily disagree if I don't agree with it, because that's what I always do. That's literally what I've made a career doing. I have the courage to say, I don't agree with this person on that, or this person on that. But I also have the courage to say, yes, I agree with this person, that we should not be transing children, that we should not be doing this. And so I am just really tired of what I believe to be neocon cowardice when it comes to rationally debating their ideas. And I think it's because they don't think they can win on the basis of their ideas. And so they start utilizing these fallacies. Anyways, you guys, moving on, because we have to get, obviously, to Joe Biden.
All right.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to the whole children going under the knife to change genders, I don't know of a state that allows anybody under the age of 18
to trans? No.
Because until the age of 18, you are not deemed an adult and thusly not deemed to be in the correct mindset to make a choice like that.
Yeah, no.
So, nobody's putting children under the knife to transition them.
No.
I don't know where they keep getting this thought process. It's 18-year-olds.
They invented the thought process for it.
See,
and their whole deal is also that children can't, that children can't make that choice for themselves. Like, they can't just, that a minor, like, boy who decides that, or makes the statement that, I want to be a girl, whatever. Mm-hmm. And again, they're reaching into the homes of what they should be respecting by their logic as private families making these choices along with their kids.
Yeah.
But they're not doing that. Mm-hmm. Like, they're not respecting those families or those children's bodily autonomies or anything like that. And like, yeah, there's no state that allows for that.
No.
And like, there's no doctors out there trying to, like, do those things to kids.
Yeah.
At most, I have read about children taking hormone blockers.
Yeah.
Which hormone blockers, you can come off of them and everything's actually okay. Like, it's going to be rough on the body catching up, but shit's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I don't, like, where they get that from, it's something they made up. Mm-hmm. to fucking, sell speech tickets or fucking memberships on locals.com or whatever the fuck. Yeah, like...
Locals.com will never not be...
funny. Yeah. At first I thought it was like some simpleton site, because if you go to Candace.com, it redirects you to her locals page.
Okay.
Yeah, or at least it did, anyway. If you click fundraising, it directs you to her locals.com page, which has no benefits listed. Mm-hmm. Aside from support me.
Yeah.
It has 0 benefits listed. I don't know if that's the case for everybody on there, but I don't care. Lastly, we get a Minect comment and a long answer.
I got into a bit of a lively discussion with this Minect user, because I go on there and I can send you guys voice notes back, and I'll just read it, whatever. Let me read it and I'll tell you what I responded to him. Aaron wrote to me, Candace, I've always been a fan of yours. I agree that Christian persecution is the most undercovered story today, especially in countries like Nigeria. That said, I've been unsettled by your recent comments. Solomon Morel was obviously an awful person, but to use his case, a legal extradition issue, to minimize the horrors of the Holocaust just didn't sit well with me. My grandfather survived the Holocaust. His parents and 4 siblings were killed. He walked with a limp for life due to constant beatings. I don't think there's a parallel in recent history where a regime attempted to systematically annihilate a people and implement a final solution like the Holocaust, which is why it's given attention. We both respect Eisenhower, who warned about the military-industrial complex. He also warned that people would eventually downplay the Holocaust, which is why he asked people to document its horrors. I miss the old Candace who focused on issues that mattered more to us Americans. Peace. So I was I guess, lively when I responded to him, and I was grateful to him. I said, I actually want you to answer me because this is so frustrating to me, because at the same time that you're saying, like, yes, I agree Christians are persecuted, but how dare you downplay the Holocaust? What are you talking? You couldn't downplay the Holocaust if you wanted to. We've got like mandatory training in school about the Holocaust. What you have downplayed is every other Holocaust that has taken place on the face of the planet. And the first time that somebody starts talking and speaking about those Holocausts openly against Christians, the response is, oh, look at this 7 seconds where she said something that I don't agree with about the Nazi scientist. Is she downplaying the Holocaust? And then they try to make that go viral, and they start sharing pictures. Like one person shared a picture, me and the Holocaust survivor. Take that, Candace. Okay, can you show me a German civilian survivor? Like, can for 1 second, this is what I actually said to him, I said, can for just 1 second, can we get a break and talk about somebody else? I said, how do you not perceive the narcissism of that? The sheer and utter narcissism that I did an entire episode that was dedicated to speaking about the horrific things that happened to German-speaking civilians. They did not vote for Trump. They just spoke. They just spoke German. They didn't vote for. Pardon, I said Trump. They didn't vote for Adolf Hitler. They were not Nazis. Their children were lined up and shot. And 40 minutes of showing what they lived through. 40 minutes of showing the documentary in which you could literally, because somebody recorded it, the cars running over them as they were alive, running over their legs. And the response is, I just feel like this took the spotlight off of the Holocaust. That sickens me. Like, if that's your perspective, I hope that you understand that as a Christian, it sickens me. And to constantly say that this is the first time, and when I said back to him, I was like, first and foremost, there were open calls to exterminate the German race. Theodor Kaufman wrote a book about exterminating the German race before all of this took place, and basically saying that they should just sterilize the entire German race before this took place. And again, he wasn't aware of it because nobody ever talks about any of this stuff. It's always the spotlight, again, on the Holocaust. And I am learning more about Christian history, and the idea that what the Bolsheviks did was not intended just for the Christians is a nonsense, okay? It was a bigger Holocaust that happened against the Christians, and I'm not going to shove about that. I'm not going to shove about that. I've done my public school training on the Holocaust. I get that the media only wants to stay focused on that, but a lot more people suffered. And so what I said to him was, I'm going to pay attention to my inbox of all of the descendants of these horrors that were enacted against German-speaking civilians in the Sudetenland region, who are thanking me for using my platforms to talk about something they've never been allowed to speak about because of laws in their country, okay? So I'm not going to apologize for that. I am grateful to this person, by the way, because we are still talking and dialoguing, and at the end of the day, I believe in more speech, not less. That's what I said to him. I'm like, really, I want to understand you. Like, how do you not perceive how to the world that just looks so narcissistic and selfish when for once it was about somebody else? So that's my perspective. Anyways, let me jump into the live.
Now, there's a lot to unpack there. Candace said,
I was, I guess, lively when I responded to him, and I was grateful to him. I said, I actually want you to answer me because this is so frustrating to me, because at the same time that you're saying, like, yes, I agree Christians are persecuted, but how dare you downplay the Holocaust? What are you talking? You couldn't downplay the Holocaust if you wanted to. We've got like mandatory training in school about the Holocaust. What you have downplayed is every other Holocaust that has taken place on the face of the planet. And the first time that somebody starts talking and speaking about those Holocausts openly against Christians, the response is, oh, look at this 7 seconds where she said something that I don't agree with about the Nazi scientist. Is she downplaying the Holocaust? And then
Now this is one reason why I play her long-form clips. Other people are going to use her short sound bites, but I like really letting her be fully terrible in her own way. I'm not above using small clips, but I find more often than not letting her really explain her terrible takes with worse words helps drive the point home. But there's more.
Oh, God.
they try to make that go viral and they start sharing pictures, like one person shared a picture, me and the Holocaust survivor, take that, Candace. Okay, can you show me a German civilian survivor? Like, can for 1 second, this is what I actually said to myself, can for just 1 second, can we get a break and talk about somebody else? I said, how do you not perceive the narcissism of that? The sheer and utter narcissism that I did an entire episode that was dedicated to speaking about the horrific things that happened to German-speaking civilians. They did not vote for Trump. They just spoke. They just spoke German. They didn't vote for. Pardon, I said Trump. They didn't vote for Adolf Hitler. They were not Nazis. Their children were lined up and shot.
Mm-hmm.
And 40 minutes of showing what they lived through.
That's great.
40 minutes of showing the documentary in which you can literally, because somebody recorded it, the cars running over them as they were alive, running over their legs, and the response is, "I just feel like this took the spotlight off of the Holocaust." That sickens me. Like, if that's your perspective, I hope that you understand that as a Christian, it sickens me. And to...
Yeah. Yeah. I know. We all felt the Freudian slip, which is funny, using that term because she fucking hates Freud.
It was actually the whole the example of, you know, me with a Holocaust survivor, take that, Candace, that one. Can we please talk about a German citizen survivor? What do you think some of the Holocaust survivors were? Latino Americans? It started in Germany. They were German citizens.
Well, there was Germans, there was Polish, there was people from all over Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, about that. About all that shit she just said that we replayed. I'm not apologizing. We covered that episode, and it was not her going off for 40 minutes. The entire show was 40 or so minutes long, but not her run at the topic. And Candace equating genocides with the Holocaust, and ignoring the peculiar nature of the Holocaust to bypass it entirely, while shining a light on valid current genocides is what I have a problem with, because it is Nazi shit. What I mean is, she will say in the same breath as will Fuentes or any of these other alt-right fools that the Holocaust happened, but also look at this thing over here. And they don't even have to mention it to begin with to shine a light on other problems that are current, such as the cultural genocide going on in Armenia right now. They make a choice to mention the Holocaust, or in her case, the treatment of ethnic Germans post-World War II, and make up figures or outright pass over events like the Holocaust or downplay it when they want to make a point. It never has to be mentioned at all. It's a conscious effort to downplay it, and we see it right here.
Constantly say that this is the first time, and when I said back to him, I was like, first and foremost, there were open calls to exterminate the German race. Theodor Kaufmann wrote a book about exterminating the German race before all of this took place, and basically saying that they should just sterilize the entire German race before.
Yeah, Kaufmann did write a book on this subject calling for Germany to perish in 1941, which was not before World War II. Kaufmann wasn't a well-known writer in America at all, but his book and his pamphlets were used widely by the Nazi propaganda machine to influence Nazi war efforts. And the people were told that this was the Roosevelt plan for Germany if America won the war, that they would sterilize the Germans and break up the country, which was not in the American playbook in any way. Yeah. German children knew his name.
Yeah.
German children knew his name. Americans, on average, did not know his name.
Yeah.
They found his books wound up in Nazi hands. They wound up in the hands of Goebbels, and he was like, the Americans, he said of it, like, we could not have written a better book to push our values.
Yeah.
And yeah, they absolutely used it. They mass printed it. Like, Nazis knew his name. Americans didn't know his name. Like, he basically, like, it would have been like writing a tweet into the void.
Yeah.
That was the extent that it affected America. So then we get...
took place, and again, he wasn't aware of it because nobody ever talks about any of this stuff. It's always the spotlight, again, on the Holocaust. And I am learning more about Christian history, and the idea that what the Bolsheviks did was not intended just for the Christians is a nonsense, okay? It was a bigger Holocaust that happened against the Christians, and I'm not going to shove about that. I'm not going to shove about that. I've done my public school training on the Holocaust. I get that the media only wants to stay focused on that, but a lot more people suffered. And so what I said to him was, I'm going to pay attention to my inbox of all of the descendants of these horrors that were enacted against German-speaking civilians in the Sudetenland region who are thanking me.
Yeah, so I'll say it as often as I can. The Sudetenland was a Nazi hotbed. And while not everyone deserved to be treated harshly, a lot of Nazis thrived there during the war, and Candace has to be willfully disregarding that to maintain the Christo-Fasc line. Final clip.
Me for using my platforms to talk about something they've never been allowed to speak about because of laws in their country.
Nope, not true. There are no laws in any of those countries regulating speech about post-World War II expulsion, and efforts have been made to address it at least since the 1990s. It doesn't make a splash here for the same reason we don't tend to get other locally important stories from other countries. We have our own shit to deal with. Candace's last shot about it being narcissistic, well, she would know. I'm obviously not a doctor, but Candace probably has some sort of cluster B personality disorder, I think. Because again, she could mention any of these things without invoking the Holocaust, but it is a Nazi tactic to do so. Okay, that's it for this week. Let's drink a stupid fucking soda already.
All right.
Unless you have anything to add.
Why didn't she use the word that already exists called genocide?
Yeah.
Like that we use that word for this.
Yeah. I was going to roll dice, but let's just randomly, because I don't know where these are.
Fair enough.
Okay,
All
that's
right.
the one.
All right.
All right.
Oh boy.
Now, I went to the same Lunds and Byerly's where I got all of the WT Hex sodas from formerly, and I found a whole other ass six-pack that was just ready to go on the shelf. This one we're doing tonight is Blue Sun Super Sour Soda. Good Gracious Green Apple.
Yeah. Also, where she's not wrong, there have been other, genocides that are
Yeah.
pretty bad, like the Ugandan one.
Like Gaza.
That one too.
Yeah.
Most recently.
Yeah.
Uganda, Gaza, what have you.
There we go. Okay.
You're welcome for the trip to the bathroom.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh God. Oh.
Oh,
Thanks.
god damn. This smells
This-
like... Hang on.
This
Smells like floor cleaner.
It does. It does. It smells like Fabuloso. Oh my God! Here goes. It still smells like Fabuloso, but honestly, it tastes okay.
Yeah.
That is a pucker.
Mm-hmm.
That. I mean, I'll finish the glass, but
My tongue feels dry already.
yeah. Here, I brought another bottle of water in here. You might want to hold that aside.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish mine off, though.
I will try to power through this one. This is...
It's okay. If you take it as a straight liquid,
Yeah.
you kind of get through it easy because it's going down as a liquid. But oh my God.
Kind of like when
Now
I
I'm
took
paying
that...
for it.
Kind of like when I took that, ooh,
Pop your jaw.
yeah. Kind of like when I took that, that one Carolina Reaper hot sauce I had.
Yeah.
And I, like, put it in my chili, I think it was. And I just kept eating my chili. So it's like, man, this tastes really good. And then I stopped for a moment to say something, and it flared up with fire.
Yeah.
And the only thing I had available was my chili. So I kept eating my chili, not knowing that I was slowly building up the heat in my mouth to just explode out.
Well, Hy-Vee has a Reaper cheese, like sliced, like sandwich cut. He went for it.
Yeah.
He went for the trip. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any thoughts to close this out for this week?
A bit of a curb in vocabulary for her of saying Nazis instead of roping all the Germans into it.
Yeah.
Because there were Nazi Italians and Nazi Poles and Nazi French.
Yeah, I mean, there were fascist Italians. The
Yeah.
Nazis were particular to Germany.
Okay.
But, yeah, the
Axis
Nazis,
powers.
yeah, they had help from other countries that just kind of skated away from any kind of
Yeah.
responsibility, like
love
Hungary.
I love the one, it was a comedian's joke. I don't remember which comedian.
Yeah.
But he made the joke of, hey, it's funny how, Italy just didn't get in trouble for anything. Like, The Hague just showed up, knocked on Italy's door, and just went, all right, Italy, it's your turn. And they go, oh, wait, try some of the pasta. And they're like, what, why are you, please, it's my mom's recipe. She died yesterday, you could at least eat it. Pay her some respect. All right, fine. Oh, man, this is some really good pasta. Hey, we got to take you down to, hang on, I have more pasta.
I mean, yeah, it's like, yeah, Italy does skate by with quite a lot, but I think it's also because Italy fell first.
True. So they already paid for
they kind of had that, and the Italians took out Mussolini.
Fair enough, yeah.
The Germans weren't taking out Hitler. Like, there was an effort, Operation Valkyrie. They tried.
Yeah.
Elements in Germany tried, but the Nazis,
Italians.
Yeah, the Nazis were very much, into keeping the Fuhrer alive. So, I think that closes us out for this week.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God, next week I am... Oh, man. I've been listening to this week's episodes, and holy crap. So, strap in, buckle in, whatever for that, y'all. Otherwise, have a great week, and I hope that things go well for you, wherever you are.
Yeah. You all have a good night, good day, good morning, whatever the fuck it is for you.
Right? Bye.
Bye.